What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Prince Petty channel. Today, we're going to get back into the 1800s. We're going to see some cool stuff. It's going to be really cool. I could be one of those guys. I feel like I have it in me. I feel like I have it in me. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So, I have two things. We're going to start with two things, okay? One of them I just discovered. Two of them I just discovered, actually, because I see the box of goldfish over here, right? And it's a comically large box of goldfish because Sam's Club, Sam's Club, Sam's Club is a store, is a bulk store, right? What is a bulk store, you might ask? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what that is, but I found out recently what it is. I found out recently what it is on by ordering some stuff, and the stuff got here. So if anyone is wondering, I am supplied. I am supplied for the foreseeable future. If we have a second pandemic or some, I'm supplied. I'm very well supplied. I won't go hungry for a very long time. So I already knew that Sam's Club and Costco, right, are like bulk stores. But for some reason, when you're ordering online, right, when you're ordering on Instacart, it shows you the size of the stuff. Well, you can't get a good gauge of it because like it's on the screen and y'all can see it over here on the screen, but you can't really get a good idea for how big it actually is. I think it's like the size of my I'm pretty sure it's bigger than the size of my head, which people say is very large. So just for scale, right? About, let me see, you guys probably don't use the metric system. We're Americans. So I would say 1 out of 3,658 of a football field, about that size, I would say. So I ordered from Sam's Club because they had a promo going on. They were like $25 off $50. I don't know how they make money with a half off promo, but that's not my concern. I'm not Mr. Sam Walt. I don't know what his name is. I'm not him. So that's him to worry about profits, and it's for me to worry about redeeming this deal before it expires. So on the app, it'll show you this is 27 ounces of goldfish crackers. What does 27 ounces look like, y'all? You can't get a good, you have to be there in person to see how, when you're looking at it in Sam's Club, you're like, wow, everything's big and it's in bulk. But when you're looking at it on the screen, I did not have the intuition to say, everything here is in bulk. I better order scarcely. That's not what I said. I just ordered a regular amount of things and it all happened to be very large. So that's what bulk stores are, if you did not know. Secondly, I had an epiphany today. Yes, 16 ounces is a pound. I learned that. I had an epiphany. We're drinking dandelion and peach tea. The cheetah is faster. Dandelion. All right. So I poured this tea right before the stream. Poured it, steeping, put some extra kick in it. Y'all don't need to know about that. And I needed a spoon to stir it. I needed a spoon to stir the tea because I mixed stuff in it, so I want to stir it. I went to my spoon cabinet and I grabbed a tablespoon. The tablespoon was too large, so I grabbed one of the smaller spoons. I grabbed one of the smaller spoons. As I grabbed the spoon, I realized teaspoon. That's why it's called that? Is that why hold on, let me Google before I sound stupid. Y'all gonna say, no, it's not called a teaspoon because you use it for tea. It's called a teaspoon because a teameter is 4.9% of a millimeter, and that's the size of the spoon. Let's learn together. Teaspoon, an item of cutlery. Cutlery. It is a small spoon that can be used to stir a cup of tea or coffee. So I was correct. I was correct. That's very neat. That is very neat. Awesome. I just had it. I've never in my life stirred tea in my life. I just stirred it today for the first time and I had to grab a spoon for it. The tablespoon was too big, so I grabbed the teaspoon and I realized you stir the tea with the teaspoon. That's why it's anyway. Let's move on. Y'all are not interested in that at all. Y'all already knew. But for me, just know for me, it was a big deal. So before we get into the main topic, I want to give a teaser to our next topic. We're going to be reading The Will to Change. We are going to be reading The Will to Change. And it is a book it's a book by Bell Hooks. It talks about men and masculinity, etc., etc., etc. But that's not why we're reading it. We're not reading it because we are interested in masculinity. Let me go through the comments. Sorry, I've been ignoring you guys. Welcome. I was just really excited about the tea thing. So I completely forgot about going through the comments and the greetings because I was like, teaspoon, teaspoon, a spoon for anyway. Welcome, Bullet Magnet, Penelope, Shim Jim, Pretty in Black, warmest of welcomes, Chrissy. I saw Vitamin in here. Vitamin dragged me in the Discord I told a heartwarming story about my family on TikTok, and Vitamin dragged me for it. Dita, welcome. Hair is growing, length check. I'd say probably right before my top lip. Hello, Khalidra, welcome. Rarnell, Taymera. Okay, we are through the greetings. We're through yes, Chemistry 101. If you did not know the teaspoon cup measurements. No, see, I discovered cup measurements last year. Don't worry. I discovered it last year when I was pouring. So here's what I was anal about my diet for a while because I was doing calorie counting and I got real anal. I was like, I need exactly 8 ounces of juice. I can't have more than 8 ounces of juice because that's got the 25 grams of sugar. That's my full amount for the day. And it has vitamin C and I can get 100% of my vitamin C if I just drink the 8 ounces. So I can't drink 9 ounces because then it's not going to be 120 calories. It's going to be like 140. And then that's going to throw my whole day. Anyway, I was very anal. And I would always pour my stuff in a measuring cup and then I would pour it in a regular cup. And I did this for like 3 months, 90 days. I poured my stuff in a measuring cup, poured it in a regular cup, poured it in a measuring cup, poured it in a regular cup. At some point, I poured it in the regular cup and I was like, this measuring cup fills up this cup nearly to the top. And then I had this epiphany. Wait, I don't actually have to pour it in one cup and then pour it in the other cup. A cup is a cup. The measuring cup, y'all don't hear me. Y'all not ready for this conversation. Sabrina's ready. Y'all not ready. Y'all not ready. Salad fork and a shrimp fork. I don't eat bottom feeder food. Y'all are eating herbivore diet, crustacean. No, thank you. I haven't tried crab and that stuff yet. Waiting for the right time. Thank you, London. Like, share, subscribe to meet your diet. So The Will to Change is a book by Bell Hooks. She talks about masculinity and some other stuff, right? And we're going to be reading it together over, it depends on how long it is, maybe like the next week or two. Depends on how fast we feel like we can get to it, who's already read it, etc. And then we're going to talk about it on the stream. And the reason we're going to talk about it is because I've seen this book cited a lot. I have seen this book cited a lot by men in particular. I have seen this. The Will to Change is going to come up in some comment sections on feminist video or videos about I choose the bear over the man or videos about I'm scared of men in public. What I tend to see a lot is The Will to Change. People cite it. People don't like cite from it, Like, if you go and read this chapter of The Will to Change, it talks about masculinity and your perception of people. Don't cite from it like that. They cite it as a work, right? You need to go read The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. It's literally almost verbatim. That's the sentence I see every single time. You need to go read The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. You need to go read The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. I've just seen it all over the place, particularly in feminist spaces when men are being discussed, right, in a way that's negative. Other men in these spaces might bring up that book like, hey, we need to stop with all this man bashing and stuff. Feminism is about liberating everybody, including men, from patriarchy. Y'all need to read The Will to Change. And I didn't think about it until recently, but I was genuinely surprised that there are men who know the name of a feminist book at all. Like, I was genuinely surprised that someone had read anything feminist at all and could cite it. So I asked some men in the comments. First, I said, I'm very surprised that you guys actually read feminist theory. It's so rare for me to find another guy who reads feminist theory. What's your favorite piece of feminist literature? They said, of course, The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. I said, okay, that's everybody. Everybody says that, right? But you know what? I can't change your favorite book. I can't force you to pick something else. So just tell me your second favorite feminist book. And crickets, right? There's no response, or I can't think of it right now. Which, when someone says I can't think of it right now, and then later they have a response like 10 minutes later, I feel like they went to Google the name of something. They didn't actually like know a book. They just went to Google it and then come back as if they knew it. But let's put that aside, right? Maybe people who read, just because they read A Will to Change by Bell Hooks doesn't mean that they read feminist theory generally, right? So I'm not saying it as if they don't read. What I'm trying to say is maybe they stay within Bell Hooks, right? People have their favorite thing. People have their favorite TV show. People have their favorite Netflix special, book, or author or whatever, and they stay under that, right? Maybe you guys have watched every single Tyler Perry movie ever, even if you're not into movies. All I'm trying to say is I was like, okay, I understand that you don't know feminist theory outside of Bell Hooks. What would you say is your second favorite Bell Hook book then, right? It doesn't even have to be like feminist literature. Do you just have a second favorite? And there is none. And I find this unusual. Hopefully we all understand why I find it unusual. So, long story short, I didn't get an answer that I thought was satisfactory. And I think the reason why is because men do not read feminist theory. I don't think men read Bell Hooks, and I don't think they read the book that they're citing. I don't think they read The Will to Change at all. Like, I feel like if someone says you need to read The Will to Change, and I say, oh, could you give me like a brief summary of the first few chapters so I get a good idea of what's in the book, I feel like the men who were saying you need to read The Will to Change would not be able to give me that. Mind you, I'm not asking you for a breakdown, synopsis, essay. I'm asking for like, what are the first few like, what is it about generally? What does she talk about, kind of? What are the ideas? I don't feel like I've gotten a satisfactory answer. So I think this is not only interesting that I can't get like any details out of the book whenever men are citing it. I can only get a read The Will to Change, read The Will to Change. I can't get a breakdown, summary, synopsis, or anything like that. Not only that, but the fact that there is not a citation of any other piece of feminist literature, but only the one book that talks about coddling men, having sympathy for men, men's struggle, right? The one piece of literature where men are semi-centered. This is what's being cited all the time by men in no other book, which feels unusual to me. You would cite this in relation to other books, right? You would cite this in relation to other works. But for the only book that you consume, and I don't feel like they even read this book, I feel like they just cite it because it has Bell Hook's name on it, and they can say, read The Will to Change, knowing it's about forgiving men, sympathizing with men, etc. But Yeah, I just find it weird. I just find it weird. Why is that the only feminist book you've read is The Will to Change, which talks about let's hold men's hand and feel sympathy for men? Why stop short of other feminist literature? That's what I'd like to discuss. And also, I read a little bit of the book, and it feels like it's being miscited because it's generally in opposition to um, feminism, not with it, which is weird because it's feminist theory. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. That's what we're going to talk about next time. Today, we're going to talk about men's rights because somebody needs to look out for men in this patriarchy. Didn't Bell Hooks write A Will to Change? Can somebody feel sympathy for the men in a patriarchy? Can somebody have sympathy for the real oppressed people, men? All right, I just dropped this tea all over my lap. Awesome. So today we're going to try to find some sympathy for men. I'm going to play my intro and we can get into it. How you can't cite the book you're recommending me? I don't like that. Read The Will to Change. What's it about? All right. All right, buddy. So I saw a TikTok. I saw several TikToks, but this is the one we're going to watch. This is the one we're going to watch. We can watch maybe like two.
And I agree with the protesters as much as the next guy, but they shouldn't be disorderly about, of course, Black Lives Matter, but property damage, that is too far. I'm against the war in Vietnam, but these protests are out of control. I mean, they should be allowed to sit at the front of the bus, but these freedom buses are hurting their chances at integrity. Of course, I'd like the vote as much as any other woman, but destroying works of art, now that's too far. These suffragettes are hurting our cause. 40-hour work weeks and safe working conditions? Well, that sounds swell, but the unions are just too violent.
So that was one of the first videos I saw. The second video I found much more relatable. Much more relatable. I just found that one like a quirky little thing, right? But this one was the one that resonated with me.
I just noticed something. Why the fuck do men always take from us? Like everything we do, they have to make it apply to them. Like City Girls, for example, they made City Boys. Like, okay, let's not a little sassy, but then the 4B movement, they tried to make their little own movement. The man or the bear. It's getting to the point where these men are literally on the internet saying, okay, if they had the opportunity, and they would choose the bear too. Like down to the sexy red lyrics, literally. Where is that with the dreads? Now they over here talk about some where with real hair. Y'all, why the fuck can't women just have shit to themselves? Like we can't have nothing. Like everything we get that becomes a trend. Like men will literally hate on it. They will bash it. They will hate on it so bad, and then they will try to flip it and make it apply to them every fucking time. You can't deny the shit. There's not been one thing that we have been able to have to ourselves.
So these two TikToks on two separate sides of TikTok, and y'all know what I mean, were, to me, they spoke. About one thing in particular, and that's co-opting women's movements and history repeating itself, right? Which is why we're talking about men's rights, because I believe that co-opting women's movement is history repeating itself. I don't think it's as new as people think. Like, I don't think it started with the 4G movement that men are making, and men are saying, oh yeah, well, you can't fire me, I quit. We're not gonna date you girls. Oh yeah, well, if I'm in the woods with a bear, I'd rather be with a bear than with a single mom, right? They just come out with some ridiculousness. But that didn't start here. Ooh, these comments are vicious. Oh, sprinkle is now drizzle. How could I have forgotten about drizzle? How could I have forgotten? And now grizzle. Even the bear got in on it. Men will hate you, but adapt your personality. Something I don't believe. I read a post, and the post talked about how Men will take a personality from the woman they're dating and go use it in a new relationship. Like they'll come into it bland, lacking, and then they will adopt her personality and take it elsewhere, like down to the emojis they use when they text. And I couldn't stop thinking about that. I don't have any proof for that claim. Please don't take that seriously, but it's something that's been running through my mind for a while. Drizzle, drizzle. Soft girl era is now soft guy era. It's like they cannot thrive without us. They need to lead them, and it's almost always black men. LMAO. This is black talk, by the way. Sprinkle, sprinkle, and drizzle, drizzle. Drizzle, drizzle, and it's some of the most grotesque, repulsive specimens posting that ish. I can confirm that. I can confirm who's posting drizzle, drizzle. The 4B movement one is sad ASF, though, because it's a huge problem point that we're trying to get across, and they see it as competition. Because they are jealous of the attention and respect women get. City boys up, know you want women treatment. So the last comment, I'm gonna put it, I'm gonna do this one. I like this one. This one says the 4B movement is sad because it's a huge problem and point that we're trying to get across, and they see it as competition. That's what I want to emphasize today. The women are making a movement, a legitimate movement to address a legitimate cause. Men respond by mocking it. Men make their movement not for men's issues, but to combat women, to oppose, to be in opposition to women, not because there's a legitimate like thing. Like the fact that I was reading about men's rights and where did the term come from? When did it first start, these ideas? And the very first mention of men's rights is a man who was talking about women gaining rights, right? Like not being seen as property. Therefore, your husband cannot argue because you're not his. In this time period, a man arguing his wife is legal because the wife is considered property of him, and you can't R property. And women are discussing ideas like this, as well as DV, which is legal to keep your woman in line, and other things. And one of the first mention of men's rights was like, we're losing the sanctity of marriage. They're giving women too many rights. I used to be okay with women's rights, but now it's reversing and men are becoming the oppressed. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like the 1800s, or does that sound like 2024? I was very surprised to read nearly verbatim, I used to be okay with women's rights, but now it's gone too far and men are becoming the oppressed and women are having more rights than men. I was very surprised to read this more than 200 years old article saying some stuff I heard yesterday on the Manosphere. That's wild. So let's get into it. Get into it. Let's get into it. Get into it. Let's get into it. Get into it. Let's get into it.
You really want to catch fucking free?
Never mind. We're not going to play that intro. We could just get into it. So let's pull up the Wikipedia for men's rights. We're going to use that as a starting point, and we're going to go off of that. This is a study stream, guys. We're just studying. Okay. We are just studying. That is all we're doing. Men's rights movement. That's what we're here to talk about today. Let me see. The men's rights movement is a branch of the men's movement. The men's movement. Hold up. The men's movement is a social movement that emerged in the 1960s and 1970s. I don't know. This is saying the 1970s, but men's rights is saying as early as the 1800s. So maybe, okay, the movement is in the 1900s, but the first use of the term is in the 1800s. Got it. So this is a branch of the men's movement, not to be confused with the pro-feminist men's liberation movement. Okay, so don't confuse it with men's liberation. Men's liberation is like, we like feminism and we need to address men's issues. Men's rights is like, women are getting too many rights and men are oppressed, right? So let's make sure we leave the liberation out of it for now. They focus on general social issues and specific government services which they say adversely impact or in some cases structurally discriminate against men and boys. Common topics discussed within the movement include family law, such as child custody, alimony, marital property distribution, reproduction, unaliving of oneself, DV against men, false accusations of R, circumcision, education, conscription, social safety nets, and health policies. Let's pause here for a second. Inherently, you wouldn't think anything is wrong so far. If you believe that family law is unfair and the laws can be better, what's wrong with advocating for better laws? If you believe that unaliving of oneself is something that disproportionately affects men, what's wrong with trying to solve this issue that seems to be systemic in society, right? DV against men, which might not be taken seriously. What's wrong with advocating for that? Nothing inherently, right? But let's continue reading. The men's rights movement branched off from the men's liberation movement. Okay, so they branched off from, anywho, with both group comprising a part of the larger men's movement. Most scholars describe the movement or parts of it as a backlash against feminism. As part of the manosphere, I was really surprised to see the manosphere on Wikipedia. They got their whole, it's a whole manosphere page. This is crazy. This is crazy. And they are being studied. I was very interested in this Wikipedia on the manosphere because they said they're being studied and investigated. And that was wild to me. So they are really watching. They're watching the red pill, MGTOW. They are watching the incel people because they say that these are dangerous people who consume this content regularly in particular. So back to men's rights. Back to men's rights, which apparently is associated with the manosphere, obviously. As a part of the manosphere, the movement and sectors of the movement have been described by scholars and commentators as misogynistic, hateful, and in some cases as advocating violence against women. In 2018, the Southern Poverty Law Center categorized some men's rights groups as being part of a hate ideology under the umbrella of male supremacy, while stating that others focused on legitimate grievances, right? So the separation between men's liberation and, I'm not reading that comment, hey you there, but welcome to the stream. So the differences between liberation, again, and men's rights, based on that last sentence where they say one side is like male supremacy, the other side focused on legitimate grievances. I believe they're alluding to the difference between men's liberation and men's rights. So the history, this is the part that I was interested in. What I wanted to know is how long has it been around? When did it start? The term men's rights was used at least as early as February 1856 when it appeared in Putnam's magazine. The author was responding to the issue of women's rights, calling it a, quote, new movement for social reform and even for political revolution, which the author proposed to counter with men's rights. Ernest Belford Bax wrote The Legal Subjugation of Men in 1896, deriding the women's rights movement as a farcical. Farcical? That can't be how that's pronounced. Let's Google it. Let's Google it, guys. It might be how it's pronounced. These are some old people saying this.
Farcical.
Farcical. Wow. I did it. I got it right the first time. All right. Anyway, my smartness aside, farcical. Farcical effort by women, the privileged sex. The privileged sex. This is 1896. He says he derides the women's movement as a farcical effort by women, the privileged sex, to prove that they were oppressed. So he seems to allude in 1896 that women are actually privileged. Women are privileged. In 1896, women are privileged. Men are the actual oppressed class, and these privileged women are just trying to make it seem like they're oppressed. 1896. Let's go back to 1856 for a second, which apparently was the first mention of men's rights, or at least the earliest, at least as early as 1856, February. I looked up the magazine because I was interested I wanted to know how it read. I wanted to know, is it really synonymous with how we would look at manosphere today, how men tend to talk about women's movements today, how they tend to like mock it with their own movement, make fun of it. I've seen some men online talk about I am the table, and any woman who's very sassy, right? But it's very much a satire of what women are doing. So again, women making a legitimate movement because of their grievances, men respond to women. Women addressing women's issues, men not addressing men's issues, but opposing women, right? This is why you might see in the comment section of let's say, in the comment section of a girl who is ARD, you might see women in the comments sympathizing, offering condolences, etc. And you might see men in the comments saying, if this was a boy, no one would care. Or if that was a girl teacher, she would have got away with, right? You'll see them voicing their grievances on posts of women going through something. You won't actually see them separately, isolated, voicing these grievances. You won't see them in men's groups voicing these grievances. You won't see them discussing ideas about how to combat this. You'll only see them in opposition to women, not because they legitimately care about the cause that they're talking about, but because they want to oppose women. So this is gynocentrism.com. And they put the article from 1856, Putnam's magazine. Again, the author was responding to the issue of women's rights. He combats it by saying we need a men's rights. 1856. I'm gonna keep saying the years because I want to emphasize Black people are not free at this time. Women are property. Like, I need to emphasize what's going on in this time period. Like, the way I looked up the laws around the period. I looked up what was going on in this period. Let me see. Let me pull up the thingamabop. The thingamabop. Let me pull up the thingamabop. The thingamabop. Merbop. Okay. Is this it? No. So I looked up the is it the, I think it might be the, yeah, that might be it. Is it the Women's Rights Convention? I don't know if that's it. I looked up like what were women talking about in this time period? What were they? Do women already have the right to vote? Are they considered like what's going on in this time period? Because I wanted a better understanding. You'll see some familiar names like Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, and some other names, right? Susan B. Anthony, etc., etc. And I'm not looking for this. I read something specifically earlier today, and it's gone. It's gone. It's gone. Oh, I found it. Okay, so this is the U.S. women's suffrage timeline. It's on nationalparkservice.gov. And I just wanted like to see what's preceding this decade, what's going on in this decade, what happens after this decade. And I'm going to read out some things that are going on in this decade. Then we're going to go back to Putnam's, read some of what the men's rights dude is saying. Then we're going to come back here periodically. The reason we're going to come back here periodically is so we have an understanding of what women are, what the experience is being a woman is at this time. So, wow, 1850, the first National Women's Rights Convention. Cool. 1851, Sojourner Truth gives her Ain't I a Woman speech. Second National Women's Rights. Third National Women's Rights Convention. Fourth National Women's Rights Convention. 1854, the fifth National Women's Rights Convention is held in Philadelphia. The territorial legislature of Washington considers a law granting women the right to vote. It is defeated by a single vote, and shortly after, the territorial legislature passes a law stating that, quote, no female shall have the right of ballot or vote. Again, just giving an idea of what's going on in this time period where the men's rights people are saying that men are actually oppressed, women are not oppressed, they're privileged, and women are trying to make it seem like women are oppressed when really women are privileged. So a law giving women the right to vote went to the legislature of Washington, and it was defeated. And then not only was it defeated, but shortly after, they passed a law saying that women cannot vote overtly. Females shall not have the right to ballot or vote. There is another women's rights convention, a seventh women's rights convention, 1857. The U.S. Supreme Court rules in Dred Scott versus Sanford that the U.S. Constitution is not meant to include Black people as citizens. The Dred Scott decision is later overturned by the 13th Amendment, but that was later, right? This is 1857. Let me see. So this would be nearly 10 years before the 13th Amendment, right? So slavery is still a thing currently. It is not abolished yet. It's not abolished yet. And also Black people are not citizens. So got it. Women are privileged in their subjugation. Are you in the 60s? This is the 1850s currently. So everything that I'm reading right now is from 1850 to 1857. 1857 is when the man wrote the article that we're about to read. 3 years prior to him writing that article, a law for women to vote went to the legislature of Washington, and it was denied. And also a law was passed saying that females cannot have ballot or vote, and they have no right to it. And now we get to current year, right? Current year, 1857, Dred versus Scott rules that the U.S. Supreme Court rules in Dred Scott versus Sanford. I'm stumbling today, sorry. That Black people are not citizens. Black people are not citizens. And Iowa apparently passed a new state constitution that includes white in the description of who can vote. So this is the time period that we are going to, now that we've kind of framed where we're going. Oh, this was in 1856. Excuse me. So this was before Dred Scott versus Sanford. This was before the case went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court to include Black people as citizens. We're not even there yet. My apologies, as far as this article is concerned. So as we're reading through this article, just exclude Black people in your mind. We're just talking about like people, according to 1856 legislators. We're just talking about people. So white men specifically, not property like women and Black people. Got it? Are we all on the same page? We all good? Okay, good. Good. Got it. As I take a sip of my tea. Okay. The following long article from 1856 discusses the sexist laws that oppressed men and benefited women. Wait, I wasn't ready for that. Sorry. A Word for Men's Rights. That's the name of the article. And it discusses the sexist laws of 1856 that oppressed men and benefited women, such as like refusing to let women vote. That's one. That's a good one. Oppressed men and benefited women. Like, can we talk about how these men were so oppressed? They were given the right to vote, and they had, do you know how hard it is to get to those ballots? And you're in line, you fighting to get to the front, and you got to wait in this line all day, and you got work tomorrow. Like, can we talk about the oppression that men faced? Can we talk about that for a second? I know that you females don't have it in you to have sympathy for men, but haven't y'all ever read A Will to Change, Bell Hooks. I recommend y'all go and read that and have some sympathy for these men. These men in 1856 were experiencing sexist laws that oppressed men and benefited women, and y'all have no sympathy for them. Have some compassion. So let's talk about these privileged women in 1856. Some of the things he included are frivolous, unjustified laws for supposed breach of marriage promise or implied promise or imagined promise. Such suits came by the late part of the 19th century to be a standard operating procedure for women who either felt genuinely spurned. What is spurned? Let's Google it. I hope this isn't like English. I hope this isn't one of those articles. Contempt. Who genuinely felt spurned, or just as frequently, women who saw an opportunity to misuse laws to control men. By the late 1920s, the practice had become a widespread criminal enterprise, highly profitable for both weeping bogus sweetheart and racketeering lawyer that it gained the appellation. So again, back in the 1850s, men are saying women are actually the privileged class. Men are oppressed because the court system is against us, and the court system is giving women our alimony, and she take the house. And this is what men are saying in the 1800s as women are rejected like the right to vote. They are saying that the system actually benefits women, not men, because if they get a divorce, they have to like provide for their wife who cannot work or educate herself. So let's continue. They said the lawyers are in on it too, by the way, and the lawyers are incentivized to get the women to go to court so they can get a piece of the man's change. I wonder, so I hear this a lot today, actually. The court is biased against men and the lawyers are just want a piece of my change. I wonder if this is in 1856. So is it like today where the men don't actually have money for someone to go dig off of, but they're still like super concerned about it? Or do y'all think they actually like have means? That's what I want to know. The notions which rule inside of men's heads and the phrases in vogue to represent them are hardly less liable to fluctuation than is the fashion of the outward adornment, whether by hats, caps, bonnets, periwigs, or powder. Did y'all understand that sentence? Hold up. Is this how the whole thing's gonna be? I might need to translate and then we come back to it. 60 or 70 years ago, so he's saying in the 1700s, 60 or 70 years ago, scarcely anything was so much talked of as the rights of man. So he's saying in the 1700s, nobody was talking about men's rights. Let me write that down. I want to be sure to remember that. In the 1700s, where was men's rights? Question mark. Nowhere to be found. Where this phrase came from, we cannot tell. It is not to be met with in any writer of prior date to the middle of the last century. Again, the 1700s. James Otis used it in his famous tract on the rights of the American colonies, nor are we aware of any earlier appearance of it in print. Sudden, however, and obscure as its first appearance was, it took and soon became one of the most fashionable phrases. It played a great part in the American Revolution. It found its way into our Declaration of Independence and into the fundamental laws of most of our states. I didn't think about this, actually, guys, because I'm always thinking about men's rights in relation to women's rights. But yeah, they were writing the Declaration of Independence and stuff like that for men's rights. I never thought about that. Like, there are women here, but these are men's rights. So they're technically there were men's rights. right? There were men's rights movements and uprising and such things, right? Specifically for men, like the women and children who are my property, like that's not, the law is not concerned with that. But for men's rights, yeah, it does predate this article. So he talks about the Declaration of Independence in our state laws which govern man. It played a still greater part in the French Revolution. 10 or a dozen French constitutions, more or less, were founded upon it. Thomas Paine wrote a famous book with this title. For a while, nothing was so much talked about as the rights of man. Talked of, we say, for as happened in the case of the thirsty Indian, so with respect to these rights, it was pretty much all talk with very little cider. In 60 years, however, fashions have changed. The rights of man, once in everybody's mouth, are seldom heard of nowadays, unless it be in an abolition convention, or, if mentioned at all, in Congress and other respectable places. These rights, once the hope of humanity, are referred to only to be sneered at as a flourish of rhetoric. I'm sliding off my chair. I don't know if y'all hear that squeaking. I forgot I spilled tea on myself earlier, so the bottom of the chair is squeaky. I'm resting my feet on the legs because I'm sitting weird. Anywho, that's not the point. This man has said in the 1700s, we were all about men's rights, but now we're in the 1800s and nobody's talking about men's rights anymore unless it's all the way up in Congress. People are talking about it, but they're like sneering at it, right? I had to Google sneered. I thought sneered was like laughing, but apparently it's a face of disgust. So people are discussing men's rights in the 18th century, or it would be the 19th. The 1800s would be the 19th century, right? No, the 17th century. I'm pretty sure. Because 0 to 100 would be the first century. Then 100 to 200 would be the second century. So yeah, the 1800s will be the 19th century. Yeah, because we're in the 21st century. I got it, y'all. Y'all just had to give me some time. Remember the teaspoon and the in the cup, Y'all weren't here for that. Never mind. Y'all don't know what I'm talking about. But people are discussing men's rights. He say no more, unless they're all the way up in Congress, or unless people are like thinking about it with disgust. Still, we are not left speechless nor hopeless. Hope still remains at the bottom of the box with a fine sounding phrase to back it. Let the men go to the deuce. What of that? Does not lovely woman still remain to us? Today, the fashionable phrase is women's rights. The women have discovered, or think they have, the women have discovered, or think they have, that they are and long have been tyrannized over in the most brutal manner by society, the laws, and their husbands. Women's rights is now the watchword of a new movement for social reform and even for political revolution. The women, among other things, claiming to vote. So, breakdown. Women are trying to vote, and he's saying women's rights is like a new buzzword. And in the phrase, the women have discovered or think they have, that they are and long have been tyrannized over. He seems to be suggesting, it seems subtle, but I still think he's suggesting that women only believe that they've been oppressed. That's not actually the case, but they've convinced themselves that they are oppressed. So again, women are privileged, the men are actually oppressed is the theme of today. 1800s, by the way, 1800s. And women are fighting for the right to vote. Sorry, I shouldn't have laughed at this very serious men's rights article from 1856. I apologize. It must be confessed that such general outcries are not commonly raised without some reason. They are the natural expressions of pain and unsatisfied desire. It was not without reason that America and Europe, towards the close of last century, raised the cry of the rights of man. And so dare we say, it is not without reason that the rights of woman are now dinged into our ears. Nor is this cry without a marked effect, not merely upon manners in society, but also upon laws. Almost all of our state legislators are at work with more or less diligence and enthusiasm, modifying their statute books under the influence of this new zeal. So let's pause. I feel like I have to pause because this feels like, okay, the earlier part felt like English. This doesn't feel as bad. This doesn't feel like yea old thy have thee went to thine. This don't feel that bad, right? But he's saying that, you know, as Americans, we divest from Great Britain. We have these grievances with our oppressor and we fight for the rights of man, blah, 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 blah. So we didn't do those things for no reason. So it makes sense, right? He says, we dare say it is not without reason the rights of women are now dinged into our ears. He's like, maybe there's a legitimate cause. But then he says almost all of our state legislators are at work with more or less diligence and enthusiasm, modifying their statute books under the influence of this new zeal. This is where he lost me, because the insinuation is like women's rights is convincing these high up lawmakers to just bend the knee to women. And as we know, this is shortly after the right to vote was denied for women and a law was specifically written to prevent women from voting, like no longer passively, like an active law. You can't do it. It used to be only white men can vote, right? For a simile. It used to be only white men can vote, but now there's a new law that says black people can't vote. That's just, why? That's just so that's so petty. And I'm petty. I'm a petty person. The law already says only you can vote. Why do you need the other law that says women? Maybe this is a Themis question. Y'all can bug Themis about it. That's not my wheelhouse. So, but he says women's rights is convincing all these lawmakers to just bend the knee. I didn't see it in anything. Let me see. Maybe I missed it. Let's go back. The territorial legislature of Washington considers a law granting women the right to vote. It is defeated by a single vote. Shortly after, the territorial legislature passes a law stating that no female shall have the right of ballot to vote. Do you think that's like Congress bending the knee? Do you think that's the Supreme Court bending the knee? This is not Congress or the Supreme Court. This is the territorial legislature of Washington. But it doesn't sound like they are just enthusiastically giving women rights in the way that the author suggests in his little piece. But maybe he's suggesting that even just the fact that women made it up to this for the law to be even considered, maybe he's saying this is people bending the knee. I don't know. Let's continue. He says, to that we do not object. Putnam is for reform. Putnam is for progress. Putnam is for women's rights, but also for man's rights, for everybody's rights. Everybody, like not black people. I want to reiterate, black people are still, slavery is not outlawed at this point and won't be outlawed for, I think, another 10 years at the point that this article was written. So when he says we are for reform and we're for progress and we're for women's rights, man's rights, and everybody's rights, he's talking about like people, not property. So black people, we're just talking about real people right now, not like what they refer to as like farming equipment. So I just want to reiterate what the time period is. I don't want y'all to get the wrong impression here. But Putnam says they fight for everybody's rights, aside from the Negro community. And in that spirit, we are going to offer a few hints to our legislators whose vaulting zeal on behalf of the ladies seems a little in danger of overleaping itself and jolting onto the other side. It is well to stand straight, but not well to tumble over backwards in attempting to do so. So as women are attempting to get things to court, such as your husband's right to argue, and that's not being a crime because you are considered his property, not being considered your husband's property, but being considered a human, getting the right to vote, work, educate yourself, etc., own your own bank account, own your own property. As women are fighting, I thought I heard the bed squeaking upstairs. I was like, but no, I think it's just their washer. Women are fighting for these, what we would consider today basic rights, but back then I'm sure were very radical. And he says that we are in danger of possibly tipping the scale to the other side, right? Because these legislators are just bending the knee to women. They're just like enthusiastically and overwhelmingly representing women at this time period where women can't vote, and can be legally be NR'd by their husband. He says that the courts are like just benefiting them so much and giving them so much privilege that the scales are going to tip, and women are going to have more rights than men, and men are going to be the oppressed, right? Does that sound familiar? Let's pause here. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like 1856, or does it sound like 2024? Putnam is for, we do not object. Putnam is for reform. Putnam is for progress. Putnam is for women's rights, but also for man's rights, for everybody's rights. It is a little in danger of overleaping itself and jolting on the other side. It is well to stand straight, but not well to tumble over backwards in attempting to do so. This sounds like I used to be okay with first and second wave feminism, but now it's gone too far. Now women are getting more rights than men. Like, this sounds like things that I've heard and on TikTok, on the Manosphere, the Red, like this feels like stuff that I've heard yesterday. And this is happening. This is the same sentiment they had in 1856. So when we read the article from Psychology Today and the research from Pew and other corroborating points of data, right? And it's saying that men are being left behind because in relationships in particular, women are looking for men with skills that include emotional regulation, amongst other things. And men are living in the past to some degree, and they're not developing, and they're still attempting to use 1850s logic in 2024, and having money and resources is not something that a woman has a necessity for out of a man in 2024, right? So it's not something that you can, this is not the only thing that you can bring to a relationship, and by virtue of having that, you can now have a relationship, right? And men aren't developing in other areas outside of that. And so they're being left behind. And when we read this article, and it feels like something that I've seen yesterday, I've seen last year, the year before that, I've heard about men's rights before Red Pill and Manosphere and all that kind of emerged, or was popularized recently. But it makes sense now. It made sense then, but it makes even more sense when you go back and read what men were talking about. When you go back and read the type of reaction men had to women's rights back then by commenting on it in a satirical way, mocking it, suggesting that these are just emotional, unruly women who don't know what they want. There were suggestions that feminism has, well, it wasn't feminism at this point. Women's rights has brainwashed women into thinking they're oppressed, but they're not actually oppressed. It's just the woke mob virus or something, but adapted for 1800s. This is certainly interesting to me. So he says we are in danger of men becoming oppressed and women becoming the ruling class, in so many words. Those who go about to modify our existing laws. Drink liquids, y'all. Stay hydrated. And leave a like on the video. It helps out. Drink some tea or water. Those who go about to modify our existing laws as to the relation of husband and wife will do well to reflect that the old English common law on this subject, if it be a rude and barbarous system, little suited to our advanced and refined state of society, which we do not deny, is also a consistent and logical system, of which the different parts mutually rest upon and sustain each other. In the repair or modification of such a system, it is material that every part of it should be taken into account. Changes in one part will involve and require changes in other parts. Otherwise, alterations made with a view only to relieve the wife from tyranny and oppression may work a corresponding injustice to the husband. Nor are the changes already made in our laws, partly by legislation and partly by usage, free from glaring instances of this sort. So it sounds like, hey, if we're giving women the right to divorce, or if we're giving women the right to be considered a human and not her husband's property, we need to make sure we compensate the men somewhere else in the marriage so it doesn't become what he says is lopsided. It doesn't sound lopsided to me for your wife to have equal rights with you. That doesn't sound lopsided. But in a world where men are privileged, right, and have more rights than women, what is that phrase? Literally everybody says this. Not everybody, but a lot of people say it. To what is it? It's like to an oppressor, privilege looks like not privilege. I don't know what it is. Hold up. Oh, I think it's to the privileged, normalcy seems like being oppressed. So like if you take away white people owning slaves back in the day, they feel oppressed because now normal to them feels like they're being oppressed. I'm not sure why. Maybe I could research into that. Oh, here it is. When you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. That's what it was. Because I definitely remember them slave owners writing in the newspaper, like, are white people going to get reparations? It's not fair that black people get reparations and we don't. This is unequal. And we are now the oppressed. I definitely remember reading some old articles like that. I absolutely remember that. When you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression, bar. So he's saying that if y'all are going to give women rights, then you got to balance out the system. If you're taking away men's rights to put hand on the wife, then you got to give them something else so that they're not oppressed. When you can't beat your wife, this is oppressing you. So you have to have other rights to make up for the fact that you're not allowed to do that. And I don't know what the mindset is, but let's continue. The English common law makes the husband the guardian and the master of the wife, who stands to him in the relation of a child and a servant. In virtue of this relation, the husband is legally responsible for the acts of the wife. If she slanders or assaults her neighbors, he is joined with the wife in the action to recover damages, and he alone is legally responsible for the amount of damages recovered, even to the extent of being sent to jail in default of the payment. He is likewise responsible for debts contracted by the wife to the same extent that a father is responsible for the debts of his minor children. There's a lot of comparing women to children in this, by the way. Even in criminal proceedings, it is he who must pay or go to jail for not paying the fines imposed on his wife. And there are many cases, even cases of felony, in which the wife, acting in concert with her husband, is excused from all punishment on the presumption that she acts by his compulsion, though in fact she may, as in the noted case of Macbeth's wife, have been the instigator. As in the noted case of Macbeth's wife. Now, I looked up Macbeth earlier, and I was like, who is Macbeth's wife? Is this like some famous woman who manipulated her husband to unalive someone? Nope, it's a play. It's a play by Shakespeare. So his citation for his example of welcome, Just Brandy. Yes, a fictional character, Penelope. He could not find a real example, so he used like a play, which is Y'all don't know how disappointed I was when I looked up who is Lady Macbeth. What did she do? What kind of lore does she have? And I found out she's not even a real person. So he says sometimes it's not the man, sometimes it's the woman, just like with Lady Macbeth. Remember her from that popular play? Anywho, public opinion goes even further than the law and holds the husband accountable to a certain extent for all misbehaviors and indiscretions on the part of his wife. Not only is he to watch what that she does not steal, he is to watch that she does not flirt. And every species of infidelity or even levity on her part inflicts no less disgrace upon him than upon her. Disgrace which the received code of honor requires him to revenge upon the male delinquent, not only in defiance of the law, which forbids all breaches of the peace, but even at the risk of his own life. Men were really going through it in the 1800s. He's also referencing the 1700s. So, like, understand that men are like the actual oppressed ones. That's what I want us to come away from this live stream with. Can we just understand that men were? Have y'all read The Will to Change? Can y'all read The Will to Change and sympathize? Can we have some sympathy for the real oppressed people? Let's continue. The law and public opinion, having anciently imposed all these heavy obligations on the husband. Now, let me pause. Was public opinion really against the husband? Was the punishment really like the wife and the husband have to share the punishment? I feel like they were very comfortable punishing women back then. Am I tripping? Weren't there like witch trials and oh, you're reading? All right. We got some wood and some gasoline for you. Like, I feel like they were comfortable punishing women. I don't remember. I'm not going to deny this, right? I wasn't there and I don't have the research in front of me to know how men were treated in this time period. But I just feel like I just have a suspicion that they are completely comfortable punishing women and they're not going to be like, and as the man, you have to get burned on the stake too. Like, I feel like that's probably not a thing. The Salem witch trials was a different time period, I think right before the century that he was discussing. Okay, so he has standing to the wife as he was made to stand in the relation of the father and the master. The law very reasonably invested him with all the rights and authority of a father and a master. And again, he's saying he's for women's rights, he's for women's rights, but you can tell in his language throughout this, like, oh yeah, his wife was like a child and he's like her father, so it's reasonable for the law to give him power over her. Like, he's telling on himself in my mind, because how are you? Oh yeah, I'm pro women's rights. I just believe that men should have dominion over women. As long as women's rights don't conflict with that, then I'm totally in support of it. But it's gone too far. Not Brittany. Anyway, so how indeed was he to exercise the authority and to fulfill the obligations which the law and public opinion imposed upon him of regulating the conduct of his wife, unless invested at the same time with means of both of awe and coercion? Accordingly, the law and usage of England authorized the husband to chastise his wife in a moderate manner. Chastise is DV, by the way, in case you guys don't know Old English. Chastise is just beating your wife. Beating your wife. In case you guys were curious. I was going to pull up the there's a Wikipedia page not on chastisement but on punishment, in capital punishment in particular, and chastisement was a section in there. So let's see. Here it is. The husband also by the old law might give his wife moderate correction, for as he is to answer for her misbehavior, the law thought it reasonable to entrust him with this power of restraining her by domestic chastisement. But this power of correction was confined within reasonable bounds, and the husband was prohibited to use any violence to his wife other than lawfully. Don't worry, guys. No, he can only beat you lawfully with a reasonable amount. That's interesting. That's interesting. Reasonable amount of violence. That's very interesting. Your Honor, my wife, I only gave her a reasonable amount of rape, sir. What is a man supposed to do if his wife doesn't want to and you want to? How you got to give a man some power so that he can keep her in line. That feels like an interesting time period, right? Interesting is not the word I'd use. I'd probably use degenerate. But we don't have to read all of that. I just wanted to give an idea of what chastisement is. Apparently, it's just a little abuse, like a moderate amount. Trust me, and men can only use it reasonably within the law, within the realms of the law, only to correct his woman. Just a little bit of domestic violence, a moderate amount. That's it. That's all. I didn't know y'all could see the screen that well. Yes, it does say in here that the civil law gave the same or larger authority over his wife, allowing him for some misdemeanors to beat his wife severely with whips and sticks, for others only with moderate punishment. So maybe you'll get the fist this time, maybe not the tree trunk. Let's continue. Yes, these podcast bro talking points are centuries old. Somebody told me that well, I feel like they dip and duck between feminism and conservatism for some reason. Whenever it benefits them, like I want to do things traditionally, but oh, we're going on a date 50-50. Like it feels like they jump into what they need to jump it whenever they want to benefit them, right? But somebody told me that the type of conservative talking points they tend to have, particularly as it relates to women, Black people, LGBT, other minorities, right? They told me that conservatives have the same game plan for like the past 600 years. They got you can go back in the writing and you can see we need to stop giving these Black people rights, and it's going to be to the point where Black people are the privileged class and white people are the underclass. They're talking about this right after slavery was overturned. Now we're reading this article. They're giving women all these rights. Keep in mind, they didn't give women no rights yet. The right to vote was just denied, and a separate law was made to prevent women from not 600 years for eternity, right? My bad, Sakara. But they're like, the fact that the right to vote is being considered for women has these men writing articles talking about it's getting to the point where men are the oppressed and y'all are making these laws, and pretty soon women are going to have more rights than men. It feels like history repeats itself over and over and over again. And for conservatism generally, the game plan is the same: resist change, and appeal to tradition. This man is appealing to English law. Like, sure, the man had complete authority over his wife, but he also had responsibility. As if like a dog, right? Like, oh my God, this dog can't do anything for itself, so I have to feed it, I have to shelter it, and if it goes out and bites somebody's leg, I'm responsible. Like almost like an animal or a piece of property. And he's saying like DV was reasonable because like how else were you supposed to keep a woman in line? She is like a child after all. The privileged class, he says. Accordingly, the law and usage of England authorized the husband to chastise his wife in a moderate manner, employing for that purpose a rod not thicker than his finger. Now, that's not what we just read. We just read about sticks and severely beat. Anyway, so maybe he doesn't even understand the law at this time period. Mind you, this article was 1856. Let me see. and the UK removed moderate correction in 1891. By the end of the 1870s, the right of a husband to chastise his wife had generally met with disapproval in the US, even in states which formally agreed to the process. So at the time of this article being written, we're like 20 years before people start thinking beating your wife is wrong. But anyway, men are oppressed. Let's read. Employing for that purpose a rod not thicker than his finger, the husband was also entitled to the personal custody of his wife and was authorized in proper cases, if, for instance, she seemed disposed to run off with another man, to lock her up, and if need were, to keep her on bread and water. I'm sorry, this is not funny, but it is when you think about the fact that men are writing about the privileged class and how they can literally be locked up in a cage and rationed on bread and water and beaten and don't have rights. But just the thought of giving women the right to vote is like the scales are turning and men are going to be like, that's wild. That's wild. Bread and water got me, y'all. Bread and water. I did not know this, y'all. I did not know this. I knew DV. I knew the husband be R-ing their wife, but locked in a cage with bread and water. We did not learn about this in history. We did not learn about bread and water in a cage. That is wild. That is insane. Now, these, it must be confessed, were extensive powers, harsh and barbarous powers, if you please, though the laws always contemplated that in his exercise of them, the husband would be checked by the same tenderness towards his wife of his bosom. I mean, girl, let me Google a bosom. Sorry, y'all. Hold up. His wife's what? Chest? It feels like it would be the opposite of chest. Am I tripping? It says the definition of bosom is a woman's chest. Okay. Towards the wife of his bosom. What does that mean? The wife of his chest? Of his wife's chest? Anyway, he's saying that this is barbaric, right? The idea that men are allowed to beat their wife and all the bread and water is barbaric. That's what the author of this article says. Even though he says the men were doing it tenderly and like with love. So he says it's barbaric, but they were doing it with love. And then he says, but however, to be checked by the same tenderness towards the wife of his bosom, which tempers the exercise by the father of a similar authority over his children. But however extensive, however harsh or barbarous the powers of the husband may be, we appeal even to our female readers. So he says, women, you too, listen up. If indeed a single female has had the patience and temper to follow us thus far, we appeal to that single female, or married one, as the case may be, to say how, in the name of common sense, is the husband to keep the wife in order to the extent which the law in public opinion demands of him, except by the exercise of these powers, or at least by the awe which the known possession and possible exercise of them is fitted to inspire. Keep in mind, this man starts off the article with men are actually the oppressed and women are a privileged class. Women's rights are going too far and it's going to start turning, and men are going to be given less rights. Also, he says he loves women's rights and he's for everybody's rights except Black people. He's for everybody's rights, but he just thinks it's going too far and women are just getting too much. And the legislature is just bending at the woke mobs. The woke mob has them bending the knee. And he says like domestic DV and R and all this stuff, that these men are locking these women in cages and feeding them bread, and all of this is atrocious. But how else is a man supposed to keep a woman in line? This is what he implores to his female readers as well. He says, we appeal even to our female readers if you've had the patience and temper to follow us thus far. How, in the name of common sense, is the husband to keep the wife in order to the extent which the law and public opinion demands of him, except by the exercise of these powers, or at least by the awe which the known possession and possible exercise of them is fitted to inspire? To summarize, how are men supposed to keep you in line if we don't have the right to beat you? Like, even if we don't beat you, just having the right, which might scare you into being good, just knowing that your husband has the right to do to you what he wants to. Um, he implores you to think, like, how else is a man supposed to, like, he don't even put a devil's advocate in here. The devil is writing the article. The men were the unruly ones, not the women. Why does she need to be kept in order? Oh, don't worry. He's going to get into how men are logical and women are emotional. Women are unruly, not men, he says. Most women are Republican? I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Are you serious? Because every time I see, every year there's a graph coming out about how men are turning further right and women are turning further left. So I would always guess that women, LGBT, Black, people of color, I would assume anyone who's like a minority or oppressed class is generally going to vote left leaning. I would not think most women are Republican. I don't know if that's true. I'm about to Google it right now. I'm gonna put your comment on screen too. You're on blast, Murder Matic Tricks. Let's do it. Oops. I didn't click in the typing thing before I started typing, so it just made my screen do a bunch of weird stuff. Anyway, let's see. Are most women Republican? Let's do that. You're on blast, Murder Magic Tricks. I'm not letting you get away with that. Oh, white women. Is this writer conservative or liberal? Because honestly, I've heard liberal men give this take. I'm going to assume he's liberal, left leaning, because he says he's for women's rights. He just doesn't like that men aren't able to beat them anymore. And like it's gone too far. I don't know. I'm assuming just being for women's rights is radical at this time. Let me see. Let me Google men's attitudes towards women's rights. In the Victorian era, men believed they were the government sex because they were driven by their minds and equipped with intellectual strength. Oh boy, that did not pan out. Not these college graduation rates. Oh boy. It turns out you can be the smartest as long as you prevent women and Black people from going to school. You got to be some type of idiot. Actually, this sounds like a whole idiot. Am I tripping? Oh my God. Why are these people who haven't studied the books that we won't let them study so stupid? We must just have bigger brains naturally. You got to be an idiot. How are you the one reading the books and you come out with this? Men are just the intellectual. We are governing because we are equipped with intellectual, logical strength. Oh my God, is that a woman reading? Burn her. We're just naturally smarter. The fact that a woman's reading a book probably means she's a witch. It couldn't be that women are equal intellectually, and if they were allowed to study and read, they could probably compete with us. Nope, it's probably just a witch, and we just have bigger brains because we're men. Interesting. We got sidetracked. My bad. Murder Magic Tricks, you're still on blast. Are most women Republicans? Gender race in the 2022. Men were roughly evenly divided between Democratic and Republican. 54% of men for GOP, 44% for Democrats. Okay, so men mostly vote Republican, but a lot of them still vote Democrat. Republicans also gained support from a higher share of women compared to previous elections. This is 2018. Wait. No, this is 2022. Sorry. So in 2022, apparently Republicans got some women. Explain. Y'all need to explain. Anywho, so 48% of women voted for the GOP, 51% voted Democrat. Where's the other 1%? Maybe they just didn't vote. In comparison, in 2018, 48% voted Republican, 58% voted Democrat. So a 7% drop for Democrats and a 8% increase for Republican. The shift in margins largely reflect differential turnout rather than shifting preferences. As in previous elections, white voters continue to vote in favor of GOP candidates. It is sounding like actually Murder Magic Tricks is correct. It doesn't sound like women are becoming more Republican. It sounds like more white women turned out, and white people tend to vote for GOP as opposed to Democrats. So Murder Magic Tricks head is off the chopping block for now. So back to the article. We had to take a detour to make sure that we are being accurate in this comment section. Let me find out y'all are in these comments not just twerking, but actually putting out facts. So y'all not just twerking, y'all twerking with college degrees. I love it. So he says, beating your wife, harsh, very bad. But how else are you supposed to keep these women in line? Where were we? Okay, so how else are we supposed to keep the women in line? If the fractious child is neither to be spanked nor shut up in the closet. So they were locking the kids in the closet too. What? Am I tripping? So the Harry Potter thing was based on real stuff? Are y'all being locked in closets? I feel like there's a very distinct memory I have in my childhood where my sisters told me it was something in the closet. Oh my God, it's this thing. This looks so cool. And I went in the closet and the door shut. And I tried to get out and they're holding their weight against the door to like prank me and scare me because it's dark in there. And I'm like really, really young. So I'm afraid of the dark. And I'm like, but that feels like a sibling rivalry. That doesn't feel like my mom is like, oh, you got bad grades, to the closet with the brooms and the mop and the cleaning supply. What? The what? To the, excuse me, getting the what? I would have looked at my mom crazy. Getting the what? And then I would have did it. I wouldn't dare talk back to my mom. You want me to get in the what? The closet. Yes, ma'am. I just wanted clarification. Thank you. Straight to the closet. I'm not about to. No, I'm not in the black household. No, thank you. So he says, women like children are like a fractious child. And if a child's neither to be spanked nor shut up in the closet, how is domestic discipline to be preserved? Domestic discipline. That's a Kevin Samuels buzzword right there. I sure do remember he came out and talked about that stuff. Also, I don't know if you guys are aware of this. It's the anniversary. Well, yesterday was the anniversary, but it's the 2-year anniversary of Kevin Samuels thought he could handle that OnlyFans model that he said men shouldn't be with. Anyway, he thought he could handle her, but like he didn't account for like his cholesterol, his arteries being clogged with all of the salt and stuff from all of the bad food that he eats and all of those Monster energy drinks affecting his heart. So he was unaware that these things combined would be bad, as well as with having a thick woman sit on you. Nothing wrong with having a thick woman sit on you, by the way, but you might not want to have hypertension when you do that. So yeah, it is the 2-year anniversary. Celebrate. I remember he died and people were celebrating. Number one, I didn't see people actually celebrating. I just saw people relieved that he was gone. But number two, if David Duke dies today, I'm going to celebrate. Wait, is David Duke dead? Hold up. Nope. He's still alive? Really? This man is still alive. In office. What? He was in office for 6 years? And he's a member of the Republican Party from 1989, 1999, and 2016 to present. That's interesting. Huh. Grand Wizard of the KKK. Anyway, all I'm saying is, if this man dies, I'm going to celebrate. So I believe y'all should celebrate when bad people die, depending on who they are. It's okay. I don't think you should, but it's okay. How old is David Duke? Hold up, my bad. There are no old pictures of him. Maybe he stays indoors. Do y'all think he's outside like they're everywhere? I don't know. He's 73. 73? That's it? What? Anyway, to get back to the discussion. The child needs to be locked in the closet. If we can't spank the child or lock them in the closet, how are we supposed to preserve domestic discipline? What more effectual sedative to... Is it sedative to an excited and ungovernable temper, which might provoke both suits for assault and actions for slander, than retirement in one's closet with the door locked and a glass of cold water to cool one's burning tongue? They are not playing about this locked in the cage in the water and bread. They are not playing about it. My clothes are done in the washer. If you hear beeping, I apologize. And so another great topic of complaint on the part of advocates of women's rights, the power which the husband has by the common law over the wife's property, he being responsible for her debts and her acts and being bound to provide for the support of the children, has a corollary thereto, the custody and disposition of the wife's property if she chances to inherit or to acquire any, which unfortunately in the middle ranks of life, where these notions of women's rights most extensively prevail, is, we are sorry to say, but too seldom the case. Huh? Huh? What? Let's go back to the top. You know what? I know the solution to this. Okay, you're upset because you as a man are responsible for the woman's debt. I have an idea. Okay, guys, it's going to be very radical. Y'all ready? Okay, let's do it. So instead of the husband being responsible for the wife's debt, both people who are married can be responsible for the debt that they accrue throughout the marriage, and just give women the right to like vote, educate themselves, and work and make money. Now, this might seem goofy, guys, but I feel like this could be the answer. I could be wrong. Such are the relative rights and duties of the husband under the Old English common law. Under this law, a husband is not a mere chimera, absurd and impossible quantity. There is a logical consistency about him. He is, as Horace says of the Stoic philosopher, I don't know that word, Teri F. Rotundus, round and whole. Well, why didn't you just say round and whole? Armed at all points, provided with powers adequate to the duties expected of him. Like, why would you give a man a slave and not allow him to beat it? How else is he supposed to keep these slaves from rising up? And you know what's crazy? Anyway, sorry. I was going to talk about how slavery isn't abolished at this point. So this would probably be an argument that slave masters make as far as towards abolishment, right? Where I assume attitudes on slavery, at least in the North, might have been souring, or not even souring, but just changing. You probably would have people saying stuff like, oh, how are we supposed to keep these Black people in line if we can't have them as our slaves, or some other weird arguments, or like we're fighting for states' rights to own slaves. There are some weird arguments I've heard, is all I'm saying. In America, we have no such husbands. Long before the cry of women's rights was openly raised, the powers and prerogatives of the American husband has been gradually undermined. Usage superseded law and trampled it underfoot. Sentiment put logical consistency at defiance, and the American husband has thus become a legal monster, a logical impossibility, required to fly without wings and to run without feet. I don't know what this means. Currently, men can like beat and rape their wife legally, so I don't know what he means by. You would think he's saying in the UK it's legal to beat your wife, um, but in the United States it's not. So it's not fair that we have to be responsible for our wives' actions in the United States, but we don't have the right to beat them like in the UK. So we either need that right or something to, or we don't need to be responsible. Like you would think that's the argument he was making, but isn't it like legal to, you own your wife at this point in US history? So what does he mean by men are like forced to fly without wings or run without feet? My neighbors aren't singing today. That's interesting. I just noticed that. What a quiet day. I wonder if my neighbors hear me through the walls. Like I'm always complaining about them singing, but I wonder if they're ever going to come knock at my door at like 8:37 p.m. and they're like, "Why are you yelling at the computer all day? We can hear you. We can't sleep." I don't know. Like what if I'm the asshole and they are singing in retaliation? Hmm. Perspective. I'm not going to stop being loud though. Why are you singing in a Why are you singing in an apartment complex? Get a house. Get a house or soundproof your apartment. Don't make sense to me. You're too broke to sing. If you need to have at least enough money to have a house. Like in a house after the initial down payment, it's actually not that expensive compared to rent generally, I think. But also you might have like uh I think you have to have an insurance if you don't put a 20% down payment, maybe HOA fees, maybe like maintenance cost and stuff like that. But like I feel like the house should come before the singing career is what I'm saying. You could even like rent a house. You don't have to buy a house. There are houses out there for rent that you can rent monthly and you can go and sing. But this is still New York, New Jersey, right? So the houses are close together, right? Mind you, I'm coming from Texas where you have $800 and you can get a 15,000 square feet house on 3,000 square feet of land. The neighbors are like 1 mile away. And this is like in a cul-de-sac. This isn't like out in the woods or something. It's a cul-de-sac, but there's so much space, so much lawn and area. And then New Jersey, New York is like the houses are squished together. So like I don't even if you got a house, I don't know if you could just sing because you're right next to people. It would be like being in an apartment still. I'm just saying, my neighbors aren't singing today and I'm enjoying that. Hopefully they're okay. So he says that men are forced to fly without wings or run without feet. Let me see. Let me look up domestic violence laws in the US and see what was going on in 1850s. Hmm. 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 I'm pretty sure the law, if I remember it correctly, the law was like you can't you can beat your wife, but if another man puts his hands on your wife, then that's against the law. But that has more to do with property damage than it does with your it's I think it was property law. So it wasn't actually like women were considered victims. It's the man's considered a victim because you put your hands on his property, like stealing his lawnmower or something. I don't know if they had lawnmowers in the 1800s. So we can go to that tab later. So I'm just saying, I don't know what he means when he says fly without wings and run without feet, because it seems like the laws are pretty similar to what's in Great Britain at this time period. So you do, in fact, as a man, have those tools to discipline, quote unquote, discipline your wife in the United States. Further down in the next paragraph, that you can't lay a finger on your wife. Oh, let's read it. Women care nothing for logic, but they have a sense of justice and tender hearts, and to their sense of justice we confidently appeal. Who can wonder that the men are so shy in taking upon them the responsibilities of the married state? Those responsibilities all remain exactly as in old times, while the means of adequately meeting them are either entirely taken away or are in a fair way to be so. By the law as it is now, we believe in every state of the Union, the husband cannot lay his finger on his wife in the way of chastisement, except at the risk of being complained of for assault and battery, and perhaps sued for a divorce, and which is worse than either, of being pronounced by his neighbors a brutal fellow. Now we have to look up the law in this time period. Oh, this is the decade where, so this is this article, he's writing this article in the exact decade that it becomes that it is explicitly outlawed, wife beating. So 1850 in this article was 1856. I stand corrected, guys. We are 6 years past the first state outlawing beating your wife at the time of his article. I'm looking for how long it took the other states. They have an article about it, but I don't know if it's going to pull it up for me. Wife beating in 19th century America. Oh no, it's like this. Look at this. Ew. Not a oh wait, it's a PDF. You can select this. Oh, I was so quick to judge them. I thought it was like a picture of a page, and I was like, ew, I can't search in it. I can't. Ew, but you can highlight it, you can flip it, lock it, zip it, search, Control F. I'm sorry, I judged too quickly. Let's see. An upstate New York Methodist exhorter in the 1840s beat his wife every other week and believed he had the right to do so. Several decades later, Santino, a Sicilian immigrant at a Missouri mining camp, constantly struck his young wife Rosa and his infant son, one time in front of a group of Sicilian men. These boarders did not intervene when the violence occurred, but a few days later, I can't read this. This is very violent. I'm sorry. I'm going to skip that. All of these 19th century American husbands beat their wives, but punishment they received differed. The Methodist exhorter was never punished, neither was Santino, but the Italian miners were ready to stone him if he appeared, and the drunken husband was arrested by the Boston police. Wife beaters today are disciplined largely by formal methods, police, courts, and social agencies, but what of the past? What are the legal and social means of punishing wife beaters in 19th century America? Oh, I have to purchase it to read it for $42. What? I have to pay to learn? Oh, never mind. I already knew college was a thing. I don't know why I just said that. American Family and Pastime. Well, I would have liked to read more of this. I would have liked to know, like, what are the actual penalties for wife beating, because this is in, is this in 1930, 1970, 1881? It seems to be that the punishment varies from no punishment at all to maybe formal punishment from the police. Google and see if it's free online. Okay. Give me 35 seconds. Let me give y'all some hold music. I want y'all to see this because I feel like this is a scam. Okay. So I click on this. This says some people condemned wife beating, but others viewed it as a valid exercise of a husband's authority to correct his wife's behavior. But when I click on it, oh, this is different. It was so, y'all didn't hear it, but there was like a robot talking to me and it was like, press the button to prove you're human. It was so weird. And I was like, is this a scam? But now it's not doing it anymore. So let's just get away from that page before we get some viruses or something. All right, let's look up 19th century, maybe 1850 specifically. (1850) saw the first American state pass a law against a husband beating his wife. Other states following suit over the following decades. Police intervention became more common in the early to mid 20th century. Girl, that's like 50 years after this article. Major change came to the law with the women's movement in the 1970s. Huh? I'm confused. Let me go back to what he was saying. By the law as it is now, we believe in every state of the union, the husband cannot lay his finger on his wife in the way of chastisement except at the risk of being complained of for assault and battery and perhaps sued for divorce, and which is way worse than either, of being pronounced by his neighbors a brutal fellow. So he's saying, number one, it's against the law to beat your wife, but number two, even if not for the law, your neighbors would look at you and say you're such a brutal man. But everything else I'm looking at is like, oh, it was divided. Number one, it's just now becoming outlawed, but number two, it's like a divided issue. It's not like people are going to look at you as a brute. It's going to be, some people are like, oh, this is completely reasonable, and then other people are going to be like, no, this is not okay. Maybe he's being what's the word, flamboyant in his language choice, or maybe I'm interpreting the law incorrectly, or I can't find what I need to find as far as the legislation in this time period. It doesn't even show when the other states outlaw it. It just says Tennessee in 1850, and the other states followed in the following decades, with 1920 being the last year where wife beating was illegal in any state. It also says domestic violence was largely ignored by the criminal justice system. Let's see. Oh, I'm getting sad. I'm reading some of the stuff about it. Let's continue. If y'all have a link to the PDF, add it to the Discord, please. I'll look in there real quick. If y'all have it, we can look at it. We can look at it in all of its glory. Okay. Nope. All right, I'll be waiting. So that's what he's saying. I found what I feel like is contradicting info, but let's continue. The nominal custody of the person of the wife, which the law still in some of the states affects to bestow upon the husband, is a mere illusion. If he attempts to lock her up, she can sue out of her habeas corpus. Please use regular language. Let me see. I'm gonna assume this means prison. Let me Google it. Okay, so this is when I look this up, it seems like it's saying she can go to the judge and he has to prove that the reason he locked her up is reasonable. So this man is saying that the husband does not have any power in the 1850s because the wife, if he locks her up, can go to a judge and he would be, I guess, asked to prove that he's doing this for a reasonable reason. I don't know. And oblige him to pay the expenses of it. Ooh. And if she wishes to quit her husband's house and go elsewhere, he has no means of compelling her return. He may sue those with whom take refuge for harboring her, but if he obtain damages at all, they will be only nominal. Wait, so y'all can sue people for your wife cheating on you? You can sue them? Let me find out. Let me find out. But if he obtains damages at all, they will be nominal. In many of the states, laws have been enacted and soon will be in all of them, giving the wife the exclusive control of her own property. What? This is wild. So you have some property, get married, and it's his? That's wild. That's wild. I'm sorry. But now, let's see. In many of the states, laws have been enacted and soon will be in all of them, giving the wife the exclusive control over her own property acquired before or after marriage, by gift, inheritance, or her own industry. Again, he's listing reasons why he feels like men are powerless and women are actually privileged, because women are being is being considered, not it's been granted in all the states, but it's being considered that maybe we should give women the right to own their property. This is taking away men's power and making men the oppressed class. What was that quote? To privileged people, equality feels like oppression, or something like that. Let's continue. While the wife is thus rendered to a great extent independent of her husband, he, by a strange inconsistency, is still held, both by law and public opinion, just as responsible for her as before. The old and reasonable maxim that he who dances must pay the piper not apply to wives. They dance and the husband pays, to such an extent that this carried that if the wife beats her husband and he, having no authority to punish her in kind, applies to the criminal courts for redress, she will be fined for assault and battery, which fine he must pay, even though she has plenty of money of her own. Let me see, 1923 Equal Rights Amendment. That's women getting the right to property, employment, and education. How are they getting money? It is illegal for women to work at this point. Is it? I mean, he did say, let me see. What did he say? By inheritance, giving the wife exclusive control over her own property acquired before or after marriage, by gift, inheritance, or her own industry. What does her own industry mean? That's what because one's industry to me feels like their employer or something. When I looked up one's industry, it said generally refers to the type of business or firm that a person works for. Ain't that illegal? Am I true? Let me see. I'm putting the math together, y'all. Oh, around in the 1850s. Wow. So women are getting the right to work. This is why I'm confused. This is the decade where women are getting the right to work. Where they're beginning to work outside the home. Laundresses, bathhouse operators, midwives, nurses, governesses, domestic service in the homes of others, beauty parlors. period. Not just saying 50-50. They were, so that's what he's saying. The women need to go 50-50, and if not, then give us the right to beat them and own their property. Is that what he's saying? Just in a few states. It says entering the workforce, but wasn't the... I see a discrepancy. So 19, that's the Civil Rights Act, but there was not the Civil Rights Act, but prior to that. But all I'm seeing is the 1940s. I was certain there was something in the 1920s, though. I'm reading on a different tab. Do y'all want to read together? Gradually beginning after 1890. So is it like granted the right to work in the way that men can work in any industry, but prior to that, at least in the 1850s, women began working as like seamstresses and other quote unquote womanly jobs? That's what I'm trying to figure out. From the late 19th century, again, it's like 1890s and above. I don't understand. How are they making money before it's legal to work, but they're working and gaining the right to work, but they don't gain the right to work until later? Is this like under the table? Okay, 1850. Married Women's Property Act grants women separate economy. 1, 2, 3, 4 states. So in 4 states, some significant things happen. In 2 of those states, women have the right to their property. In 1 of those states, women have the right to own land. In 1 of those states, wife beating is outlawed. Then 1852, 2 years later, 2 more states where women have the right to property. In 1 of those states, women have the right to own property but not control it. What? Anywho, Wisconsin, married women are given the right to own and manage property in their own name during the incapacity of their spouse. Then over the next 2 years, separate economy, separate economy. Married women are granted patent rights in the year that this article was written. In Maine in 1857, women are granted the right to control their own earnings. So now I need to see where were their earnings coming from. So let's open this one. No, I'm not about to read all this. What the hell? If you're not looking at your screen, come and look at it real quick. My curiosity just died instantly. No, thank you. Wow, look at how. Oh my God, they thought I was about to read it. Anyway, let's go back here. No, thank you. Let me look at it one more time. Oh, that's funny. That is funny. That's a citation. Oh my goodness. It's so small. What, the text is so small. Can you imagine if the text was regular size? Imagine how much longer it would be. Oh my goodness. They thought I was about to. Anyway, they were some ladies of the night. Is that how they were making that money? Anywho, let's continue. We'll go back to that. Or not. We're reaching the 2 hour mark, maybe a different day. I'm also going to open the panel at this point. We're going to keep it under 15 minutes. Under 15 minutes. Let's do it. If anyone has anything they want to add, I'm going to get y'all out of here in 15 minutes. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm going to get you out of here in 15 minutes. I'm about to read faster than I've ever read in my life. While the wife is thus rendered to a great extent independent of her husband, he, by a strange inconsistency, is still held, both by law and public opinion, just as responsible for her as before. The old and reasonable maxim that he who dances must pay the piper, not apply to wives. They dance and the husband pays. We already read all of this. This says that if your wife beats you and you take her to court and they fine her and you have to pay the fine because you're the man and you're responsible for her debts. To recap. Now, what sense or reason is there in making the husband responsible for the licenses of the wife's tongue after he has lost all power to control it? If the wife is to hold her property separately, ought she not to be sued separately, both for the debts and damages? If her property ought not to go to pay the husband's debts, why ought his go to pay hers? If the husband has lost the power to control towel goings in and runnings out of the wife, why ought public opinion to hold him any longer responsible thereof? I feel like this man is flat out lying. The public opinion was split, with half of the people saying beating your wife is like completely okay and reasonable, and the other half like, we don't think that as much. And even if we don't think that's cool, you can still do it. We're not like gonna punish you. Purple Lover, you were saying you were actually in support of these laws, and you do think that men were oppressed back then.
I totally do. I think that they were so oppressed that the women should have been given them special treats to help them to go into the afterlife. Since they want to beat their wife. As a matter of fact, did you know there's a story about a woman in London who were dropping them dead for her friends? She would give them these cute little packages that they would take home and prepare for the husbands. And it was the most hilarious thing because they were having like a pandemic type case of these men just dropping like flies, and they didn't know why it was occurring. But it was because of this one woman who was giving these women these little special treats for their husbands. I got so tickled when I heard that.
Some special treats.
They were, when she found out one of her friends was having a problem with her husband, she would fix up like these little bags of stuff for her to take home and to feed to her husband. And then all of a sudden, he would just suddenly drop. And nobody knew why, because at the time, I think what she was using was untraceable. So it just looked like these men were just dropping like flies for no reason.
Third husband this week. Shame. Shame.
And see, at this time, it wasn't uncommon to know about different mushrooms that, would send somebody to the afterlife. You could just go and pick the appropriate plant and add it to the meal and call it a day.
I'm looking up when was divorce legalized, because I'm like, these men are like, oh my God, if my wife does this, I have no, can you leave at this point? I know no fault divorce wasn't a thing back then, but if you're like, my wife is unruly and she's cheating, and like fault divorce, I'm pretty sure at fault divorce is a thing at this point.
Actually, no fault divorce really wasn't a thing until way later. As a matter of fact, my mentor Nev Goddard talks about how initially it was impossible for him to get a divorce from his previous wife. And he managed to get one, but it wasn't something that was easily done. And that was during like the 1920s, 1930s. So the ease of access to divorce is still really a recent phenomenon.
Um, I agree, particularly with no fault divorce, but also I'm reading that
I
in
just find it
the
fascinating because, like, I
Mhm.
actually appreciate the irony of if you take your wife to court for her beating you, you're the one who's going to have to pay the fine.
Yeah, what do you mean your lawnmower fell on you, so you're
That's kind
suing
of
your
hilarious
lawnmower?
to
It's
me.
your property. What do you want
So
the court to do?
it,
My house fell on me. I'm suing the house. Okay, you have to pay for the
I didn't hear
damages.
your question.
Oh no, it's not a question. It's a reenactment of what happened. It's just a reenactment of what happened. That's all. Somebody complaining their property fell on them,
Yeah, I'm
so they
sure a
sue
lot
their
of.
property.
Mhm. I'm sure there was a lot of accidents inspired by women. Oh no, the ladder just kind of wobbled a little too much while he was on it
You said the
because
laxative
it's
did what?
terrible. Like the audacity of them to. Hmm.
You said the laxative did what? I think
What was
there's
your
a
question?
delay.
Yeah, it's a slight delay on my end. My internet is wonky. Um, I was saying the audacity of them to get upset that the system that they created occasionally benefited a woman. And it really was, it still really wasn't benefiting them because look how long it took women to get the ability to have check accounts and stuff in their own name. It wasn't
Yeah,
like there was some type of free for all.
yeah. I'm even reading in the 1800s, particularly the mid and the late 1800s. So around the time this article was written, for example, it says the divorce rates in the United States increased, and Americans obtained more divorces annually than were granted in all of Europe, which is wild. Previously, divorces in the US were mainly granted to the middle and upper classes due to their cost, but the legal process became less expensive. Other proposed explanations include the popular acceptance of divorce as an alternative to marital unhappiness, decay of the belief in immortality and future punishment, discontent with the existing constitution of society, the habits of mobility created by better transportation, and the greater independence of women resulting in their enlarged legal rights and greater opportunities of self support. The divorce rate continued to increase, and up to 3 couples per 1,000 divorced, rising to 8 couples by the 1900s. So, like the time in which this guy is writing this article, and he's like, "Men have no power. You're not letting us beat the women anymore. How are we supposed to control them? And if she's being unruly, we're stuck and forced to care for these women when we don't even have the right to beat them anymore." And you can literally leave at this point. You can literally leave the marriage. And a lot of people are doing it apparently, to the point where it became a big trend. So I don't understand. I don't understand the author and what he, I don't understand his perspective based on the time period he's in, because you you are not trapped, but he's writing it as if like, let me go back real quick.
I do because entitlement never was out of style. Entitlement has always been a thing. And anytime, like you said earlier, when the oppressor sees the oppressed getting rights, they feel like they're the ones being oppressed at that point. Because how dare you take something that didn't belong to me in the first place? And just like we're watching them trying to roll back the ability for women to divorce, and they're steadily trying to roll back women's rights right now, especially with that birth rate in the toilet like it is all over the world.
It's also
That's
the time
I'm
of
sorry.
slave. It's also the time of slavery for this white man who was probably a master of slaves too. That's not it. I mean, that's probably a part of it. I do think white people were entitled back then, not just back then, but back then especially. But that's not it. I'm trying to put my finger on it. It's not just entitlement either. It's like, as a logical person, right? As a logical, intelligent male who is like more logical than the female emotional like people that he's talking about. This does not make logical sense to me. When you say that women are seeking to entrap you in matrimony against your inclination, and then like they get married to you and just go out and cheat and use all your I don't believe this is happening, by the way, but he says they're just going out and can cheat and use all my money, and anything she does I have to pay for it, and I have no choice. I'm trapped in this marriage. But you are not actually trapped. Like, this is my thing. Like, you're saying that men are losing the power to discipline their wives, and this makes men powerless. But also within this, you can leave your relationship. Divorce is becoming more common and more accepted in this time period, and grows exponentially to the point where just the United States out out what's the word? Where was it?
Outpacing.
Outpay outpaced all of Europe. Outpaced all of Europe. Like, just the United States outpaced all of Europe in the amount of divorces. So you're not trapped in a matrimony. You do have the option to leave. You might lose power elsewhere in the relationship, but you don't have to stay in a relationship that you think is bad, apparently one where you can't beat your wife and have no control over her or her property. So you're not like trapped in this. I'm just trying to understand why does he feel trapped? Am I missing something?
No, you're not missing anything. It's the willful ignorance. It's the projecting for me. Because the reality was, at that time, it was women who were still trapped. Because look at how limited her experience is compared to her male counterpart. It's nowhere near equal, even with what's being done. This is still not an equal relationship. It's extremely lopsided. So, like, the reality is, like so many women have said, and I will say it right along with them, marriage has always benefited men more than it did women because they got free labor. They not only did they get free labor from her, she had babies for them, which created more free labor for him. Not to mention the other labor he has going on at this time. So, like, the benefit was never for the woman because please tell me what woman is just dying to live life in servitude from the time she's a teeny tiny little girl. Because as soon as she could walk good, they started teaching you how to do everything, how to turn you into a wife. So where is this wonderful experience that she's just having? And all this cheating and things that he's talking about, the reality is that would still have been more of a male dominated thing than a woman doing at that time. First of all, when does she have time to cheat when she's in constant servitude? Like, this is just, it's the audacity for me because it's the willful ignorance. This is, I'm going to paint a picture because this is not anything that, if you talk to a woman at that time period, the article would not look anything like this.
Oh, I read some women's writings from old time periods, and some of
Hmm.
these women don't like feminism either. They don't like
Mhm.
we're just silly women. We don't need to write the. It was some just pearly things back in the day.
Oh, of course. Yeah, there's always going to be those. But
And I'm like, I was like, I was gonna say women. Well, they could have cheated during the daytime while their husband is at work, but all the other men are gonna be at work too. But then that milkman, that's it, isn't it? It's the
a
milkman.
proverbial milkman.
You've been seeing the milkman. She was crazy. She kept saying it. You've been seeing the milkman, and
Don't
then
forget the mailman, too, because that was the other one.
in the mailman. Welcome, Mally Yun.
Yoon.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Welcome, Mal.
um, I think I had something to add to what Purple Luva was saying. Oh, is it Lava? Sorry.
I like the
But
way
I
you said it. Both is fine.
I think that like one of the biggest reasons why they probably were very, very upset is like imagine having complete control over something. Um it's I have a lot of this problem when I'm talking to parents about how they treat their children. They're like, how come I can't do this? You know, why would this be wrong? When it comes to like physical violence or emotional like violence towards their children. Um, and I think it's because they don't see women as autonomous beings. Um, and they feel that the reason why hold on, they have the right to control their bodies and their minds because they're basically um, supposed to lead it. Sorry.
It's like fluctuating between very loud and very low.
Oh, my mic.
Yes.
Hold on, let me switch to my other mic.
It sounds good on mine. That's weird.
Oh, maybe it's me.
But I
Um,
completely agree with you. And let's be real, these men did not like women. So, you know, you had complete and total ownership of these people.
yeah.
And
Oh,
that,
I had a. Sorry.
oh, now I hear it. I think it just did something.
Better now.
Actually, it went lower for me now.
Let me know in the comments if it's me or if there's a um issue with the mic, because it could be me if
I
everyone
just
can
went
hear
low.
clearly.
Yeah, it just went lower for me now. Just,
Is it okay? I have no idea.
just,
Okay. Is this good?
Yep.
yeah.
Oh, okay. I instead of self-controlling it, I guess I decided to set up like auto or whatever, and I thought it would just do it perfectly for me, but no, I had to finger it myself. Not finger it, like what's the word in English? Finagle it. I had to finagle it myself. I didn't mean to yeah.
I have a question for both of you to answer. Who would
Mhm.
like who would like to go first?
Molly can go first. You don't heard me talk your ears off.
Okay.
Do you How do you feel about the idea that, according to his claim, I don't treat any of his claims with validity, by the way, because I feel like there's contradicting and untrue information in this article. But let's give the benefit of the doubt for 3.5 seconds. What say you about the idea that a man can suffer domestic violence and have no real recourse for it, at least in this.
In that time period,
Yeah.
I um I I okay, I do actually don't believe that men could like in that time period specifically. I don't really think that men could face domestic violence and not have recourse, considering during that time period you could literally put your woman in an insane asylum for talking too loudly, or you suspect she's a lesbian, or she's not giving it to you at the right times. Women didn't have enough rights for that to be valid, in my opinion. Kind of sounds crazy, like, but yeah.
No, it doesn't sound crazy. Purple lover.
No, I completely agree with you because let's not forget being able to muzzle your spouse was a thing. They had masks that they would put on these women so they couldn't even speak if they didn't want to hear them. If they felt like they were talking too much, they had remedies to make sure that she didn't talk. So all of a sudden now we're supposedly the same man that can muzzle women is also having a problem putting her away because it was not a big deal to get rid of your wife in so many different ways. I mean, what he's saying is just not holding to what is known about that time period
It holds no water. Is that
at all.
yeah. Also,
I'm
English is
reading.
not my first language.
I've also read more of it than you guys have. So there's like a piece in here where he's talking about women who are promised off into marriage by their father against their will, and how he feels like men's obligation in marriage is like worse than that scenario, just like the expectations to provide and those such things like supersedes in his mind women being married off against their will. He feels
Yeah.
like, oh, that's bad, but it does not compare to what men have to the societal expectations, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying, I don't treat a lot of what he's saying with merit. And I would agree with you. I don't think there was no recourse for men in this time period. And even to the extent that what he's saying is somehow true, and if your woman beats you and you go to court and she gets fined, but you have to pay the fine because she's your property. This
I
is
think
like
that says
a failure of
everything.
the law in the first place. She's your property. You should be concerned with women's liberation, not men's rights. This
Yeah,
would it. Mhm.
I think it says a lot that you would have to pay the fine for your woman assaulting you, essentially. Um, like she hadn't like in that time period they had no rights. They had no rights to property, and women didn't even have the right to have their own credit cards, I believe, or debit cards until like the was it the 80s, late 70s.
Till the
um
70s,
yeah, it was the 70s, so
till
they
the
hadn't.
1970s. It
Yeah, and
was,
they
yeah, it was
yeah.
really recent compared.
Yeah, like you could take like a woman would be working and all of her profits would be going to her husband. So if she was working, he could just use the money that she was she was working with. I'm sorry, my English is not Englishing right now. But money that you could use the money that she earned at her job to pay off whatever, like just whatever thingy that the judge said that you had to pay, basically.
I'm not gonna lie, it's still going in and out for me.
Oh wait, oh hold on.
To me, it's.
I'm
I'm sorry. Go
Here, let
ahead.
me try this. Try now.
testing 1 2 3, potatoes and onions.
That's
Oh,
probably
that's
okay.
not good. Potatoes and onions.
I turned your volume up 15%. I didn't know I could do that, but I just went ahead and did that. So if it goes low, I can still hear. That's all. Could you repeat what you said? I didn't hear it because it was in and out for me.
Yeah, so I was saying that considering that up until the 1970s, women couldn't get their own bank accounts. Well, their bank accounts and all their funds would be controlled by their male counterpart. Um, they would be using the woman's funds to be like um they could use the woman's funds to basically pay for whatever discretion that she did against them, basically. um I don't understand how somebody that is not an autonomous person can basically, not that I don't think that non-autonomous people can't inflict harm onto others, but it just makes no sense to me. Like the idea that I would take somebody to court that has no, like, that I have complete control over, and then expect for that person's thing to not be paid by me.
I'm sorry. Like you take your child to court, and the court's like, all right, you have to give up your whole allowance to your dad.
Like it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, this man's solutions for men's issues was not giving women the right to have a credit or debit card or bank account or property or anything like that. It was giving men more rights. He talks towards the end of the article about polygamy and how other cultures, if a man is not satisfied with his wife, he could just get another one and another one and another one until he's satisfied. But once we're married, we're done for. Um, So, I mean, polygamy or like give us the right to quote unquote domestic discipline our wives. So, those are his two solutions. He doesn't talk about, I mean, I guess this is men's liberation as far as that time period or what rights men are fighting for. So, that's how the article concluded. Um,
Yeah, I found out what the problem was. I tend to place the mic farther away from me, and I'm a very low speaker. uh,
my tea.
yeah, I was gaming before when you came on, so like I had my gaming mic, my headset on, and I had my microphone far away from me, so that I'm not screaming in people's ear.
Yeah, sometimes when you should put the thing on,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yep.
Well, I mean, I guess how did you interpret it?
Um, I basically interpreted what he was saying as, please
No,
allow
not
me
that.
to
I'm saying when I put it on the thing.
put it on the scene.
No, yeah. Well, I'm asking you.
Oh, when we were talking about the mic, sorry.
Hmm?
When we were talking about the mic.
No, the question I just asked you.
Sorry, I'm slightly lost.
No, when I was saying I was gonna put it on the thing.
Put it on the thing.
No, no. What?
Put it on. I'm sorry, I heard you say put it on scene.
I feel like you're trolling me.
No, honest to God,
Look,
I'm
I
not.
feel like I'm lost myself because I'm not
Okay,
making sense of what he's saying to you neither.
you were about to give your final thoughts though. So I will give you 35 seconds. Welcome the other MJ. We're heading out now.
Yes. Sorry for my understanding gap somewhat, I suppose.
It's
But
fine.
I think for me, what I believe he was saying was that he wanted the right to be and own his wife while she was a that's it. I think that's all it was. And that he shouldn't be like looked down on or disciplined for disciplining his wife in any way.
Mm, that's what you got from it. Purple
Yeah.
Lover, what did you get from it?
I got that he just had a whole lot of audacity and not a lot of valid complaints. That's what I got from it. Because during this time period, this was literally the patriarchy designing a government in its favor, and you still managed to bend yourself over into oppressor to complain about non-relevant things. Like how many? Let's be real. Even today, how many women are constantly reporting everything that's being done to them? That's not a thing. We, it's underreported. So like, especially during that time, it would have been underreported because where is she going to go? Because everybody's going to basically push her back to the husband.
Oh yeah, part of the article that I skipped over because it was too graphic had to do with men doing some absolutely atrocious things to their wives, but they were rarely ever punished because the wives never pursued any legal or criminal action against them. Like I wonder why.
That
I-
and
Well,
also,
some would never be able to because some of them were buried alive in walls. I mean, the things that they were doing to women was atrocious. Like it was nothing for somebody white to be there 1 minute and then, oh well, she went to see her granny in Timbuktu and never be heard from again.
I think also during that time, because um the R word was basically seen as a property issue when it did happen to women. It was like, why are you even here complaining about that? And there were no, not saying that there weren't any social repercussions, but because the woman was that person's property, they could do with that woman as they pleased. And even in cases where like the R wordist was prosecuted, essentially they paid out to the males, and the woman wouldn't like really receive anything through that.
Yeah, because that's another recent phenomenon. That's being able to say that your husband violated you is a really recent thing as well, or any partner for that matter, because
Yeah,
it wasn't taken seriously. If you were partnered with somebody, the entitle the entitlement that men were allowed to feel was
because it was
outrageous.
your job, essentially it was your job to
Hmm.
provide that service, in the eyes of those people, not trying to trigger people, sorry, but in the eyes of the larger public and the government, it was basically your job to provide that service, and if you didn't provide that service, you were a problem to begin with.
Hmm. And and let's not talk about a lot of the women that wind up in um, asylums because they refuse to be the typical housewife that was seen as problematic because they didn't want to live by the usual status quo. So they just tossed her into an asylum and said she was crazy. Because
Yeah,
let's not forget, during the same time period, if you were to run away as a slave, they consider that a mental health issue that you actually wanted to have your damn freedom. They literally thought that was a mental health issue if a slave was to seek after their own freedom.
oh, they went to court and decided that slaves aren't people and thus don't have.
Hmm.
Well, I read it at the beginning of the live stream, but yeah, they went to court. They went to court for
Yeah,
that,
so
and they definitely said, "Yeah, no, black people are not like humans, so you don't actually have a right in court in the first place." So dismissed,
mhm.
dismissed. With that being said, well, that's a sour note to end on. I'll play my after show, and we'll have a quick, quick one. Suddenly tired, just hit me. You know what? It's past 9:30. My bedtime. That's what it
oh,
is.
poor baby.
Mm-hmm. Up past curfew.
I still have some gaming to do because I have to catch up, but
What game do you play?
Right now, I'm trying to get like I'm playing Apex Legends. Sorry.
Really?
Yeah.
No Overwatch.
No Overwatch. I'm actually trying to get into Overwatch, but I'm like I prefer Apex Legends a lot more. And that's my yeah.
I used to be addicted to that game, but I think so I moved to a PC because once I figured out how to hook the controller up to the PC, like we're Gucci now. We're
Yeah.
Gucci. But and then I never played it because it didn't have, I don't think at the time it had the cross stuff.
They have cross stuff, and then you can also get simulators because that's what I have on my computer for games that don't have cross play. I always get a simulator, and is it legal? What are okay? What I'm about? Okay, okay. I don't want to say anything illegal.
Yeah,
But yeah,
at least not on my stream. Um, you can put it in the Discord. That's what you can do. The Discord is open, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. There's a link in the description if you're interested. We don't
okay.
talk a lot, but when we do, it's very ghetto. So, um,
Yeah, I'll make sure to like give you. But it's really easy to find simulators. Wait, is that illegal? Okay, I'm sorry.
oh, my
I
friend
have no
texted me. Good
idea.
luck. So, with that being said, no illegal activity has been mentioned here, to my knowledge. Uh, yeah, no illegal activity. Let's end on that. Oh, also, I'm going to college now. I'm already enrolled in taking classes. So if you're wondering why I look exhausted, it's because I am.
Yeah,
With that being said,
I took
Oh,
the
um,
semester off.
congratulations to you. So happy
oh,
for you.
oh, don't congratulate me because I'm using my college courses as y'all are like experiments, and I'm about to. Anytime I have homework, we're gonna come on stream and do it together. Like I'm about to run it past y'all. But the homework's like psychology or philosophy or sociology or
Ooh, subjects I like.
it's mostly like not math or stuff. So I'm not gonna come on here and hit y'all with the questions. It's just going to be things that I think are interesting. Like what if I get a question in philosophy and it's like what is the meaning of life? We're definitely going to come on stream and talk about it. I'm going to steal those answers and utilize it for my work. I mean, take inspiration from those answers and not plagiarize it at all. So just be looking out for that.
Well, for sociology, they'll ask you questions that are. Have you taken sociology yet?
No, my first two classes are I'm taking psychology of gender and
Ooh, nice.
something else. I'm clipping them though, so I'm not taking the classes. I'm going to test out of them because I looked at the questions and they actually look like things that we discuss fairly frequently, and I did very well on the practice test. So psychology of gender just seems like feminist stuff. And the other one I forgot. I think it's like calculus, maybe. I completely forgot. This is math. Some math. I forgot. After I clip out of those, then I have a heavy focus on philosophy, sociology, and psychology. But I don't know what I'm going to major in yet. It just depends on what feels most opinion. I could be a philosopher. I could be a philosopher.
I'm
Why?
Okay, so for my
Why?
sociology class, the reason why I said that is because I went onto my Discord and I was talking to everybody in my life and asking them the questions that I was asked in my sociology class. And basically in my essay, I in social like I guess in my sociology class my professor allowed us to interview people and put in our own thoughts. I couldn't answer why Americans don't eat dogs. That was one of our first class questions.
You couldn't answer it?
You couldn't say that it was cute and it was a pet.
Wouldn't you say it probably depends largely on the culture that you come from, and it probably was more common back in nations that aren't
Yeah,
developed. Like even in countries where it's
even
quote
countries that are
unquote
developed.
common, it's usually in like very poor areas, like those videos you see of Indians
Mhm.
on TikTok, and they're like picking up the food with their feet, dipping it all in the slop and doing weird stuff. Tends to be like poor areas of India. I probably would have said we probably just don't need to anymore. I bet if we look back in the cookbook, in the
Yeah.
cookbooks, we'll find some. Let me see.
The question is,
Wait,
why
did
can
y'all
you have
have Google at the time?
for my sociology class? I
Yeah.
just took it. I'm actually
Wait,
uh
you can't Google your way through. Uh-oh.
no, you
I
can't.
thought this was about to be a breeze. Oh no.
No, it's like it's because it says we have like you know how people can have fish as pets, but you can still eat a fish, right? Like and you can have birds as a pet, but you still eat birds. You can have a chicken as a pet and you can still eat a chicken. Why can't you eat cats and dogs? Um and in where I come from, we don't really where I immigrated to the US out of as a young child. So like um and where I come from, you don't really see we don't have domesticated cats and dogs like that. So I was like, I'm not sure. I'm not from either culture where one of them eats the dogs and cats and the other one doesn't, because there are a lot of countries. During my research is when I found out that there are a lot of countries that keep them as pets and still eat them at the same time. So I was like, I don't know. I know the reason why we don't eat it in my culture. It has a lot to do with religious religious reasons why we wouldn't eat a cat and why we wouldn't mess with dogs. Um, but outside of like my religion and my culture, I couldn't understand it. Like why Americans, why Western folk don't eat cats and dogs. Because if you can eat a fish when you have a pet fish, how
So
come you're not eating
wait,
the
so
cat?
the question isn't like historical, why didn't Americans develop in a way where they eat dogs? The question
Yeah,
is like morally, like why don't
yeah,
we eat
yeah,
dogs? Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So it's not bringing in the legal ramifications of why we wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Like it has nothing to do with that. It's why are we allowed
Okay.
to eat them?
I feel like I'd probably eat dog. Like we ate gator and stuff like that in the South, so I feel like we would eat some weird stuff. If you're eating alligator, like that feels
Mhm.
like something that you are not supposed to eat. But it was at these carnivals and it was at these festivals. They have some fried gator if you're into that. I'm gonna stop talking. Y'all are being very quiet.
I mean, people in my
I think
classroom. No, I was laughing. I'm
I
sorry.
actually
People in
think
my
the
classroom.
reason
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I
Go
didn't mean
ahead.
to
Go
cut
ahead.
across you. I really think the reason why we don't do that is because of the history that we've had with cats and dogs being like protectors of us, and it's more of a equal type relationship in a lot of respects because dogs were used for hunting. Cats were able to keep certain pests away that would keep you healthier because you had a cat on the premises. So I think their their usefulness basically
Mm.
was
But
really
the,
a lot of the reasons why we just did not see it as that because in our culture, like we use dogs for herding and hunting. There's a lot of things that the domesticated quote unquote pets that you're talking about were useful. And with just working with these animals on a daily basis, you'll tend to form more of a bond. Because one of the things my grandfather told my mother was to not name the chickens and stuff because they were going to be for food. So
Mhm.
we also name these animals, which gives us more of an attachment to it. So I think it's kind of like a generational thing because we have been in relationship for so long since the cats and the dogs domesticated themselves and came into our lives to be a part of our lives. They made themselves a kind of like an intricate part of our life. where
I think
we're not just seeing them as food.
one of the examples that we gave that was given to us in the classroom for animals that are also useful and lovable and all that is horses. Horses are used in like we domesticated them to be useful. We domesticated them to basically for sport. We domesticated them for like grazing, like I not grazing the farms, but like you know when you're like putting when you're plowing the farm and stuff like that, as well as oxen. How come horses and oxen are not treated the same as you would a cat or a dog?
Because they tend to live inside the house with us, those animals tended to stay outside. So you're not having the constant companionship of the ox or the horse like you would a cat
Yeah,
or a dog. So that's why. It's the
I.
familiarity of being around
Mhm,
the animal constantly that just
mhm.
it becomes kind of like familiarity breeds a certain amount of bonding naturally just because you're around that animal day in and day out and you're constantly interacting with it. Plus the affection and stuff that you're constantly getting from the animal because you're exposed to it more. Whereas those animals you literally have to go outside to interact with them.
But more, I think
That's what.
animals, dogs being inside people's homes is a more recent evolution in human history. Um, I think if you go farther back in time, people did not put dogs in their house. Um, I think when did I was gonna say white people, but when did when did Western people start putting dogs in their house? Um, because I think that's like more towards the 50s, 60s, or 70s. No, 50s or 60s that people started putting dogs in their houses because before that, dogs were used to protect livestock, and not necessarily allowed to be in the house. Their job was to be outside with the rest of the livestock.
I have a tab open looking at all types of
Well, even
horse
with that,
dog
if you were
game.
to look at it from just that utility standpoint,
Yeah,
it would
like
still be
it's
more valuable to not eat him because he's protecting more expensive property.
yeah, like, but then
You
it wouldn't
just
make
would,
sense for you to eat your
yeah.
horse as well because you're also using the horse as a way to basically help in your farm, and you're using the ox as a way to make sure that your crops are developed. They are useful
Yeah,
in
but
ways that
it's
matter.
a huge difference. It's a huge difference though because you're only going to get but so much off of a cat or a dog, whereas a ox or a horse, you can have meals for a very long time off of those because it's way more of it for you to work with
Yeah,
versus a tiny house cat or a dog. Because even if you get a big dog, it will still not compare to what a ox or a horse is going to give you food wise. Especially
yeah,
when you start to get into societies that try to use all of the animal as much as possible. So
yeah,
you can get like furs from the ox, so it has multiple utilities to consume it and use the products of it.
I don't know. I'm like I still I still don't see the. Okay, I still can't see the difference between a cat and like a cat, a dog, and an oxen and a horse because they still have usability and they're still all very useful for different things essentially. I think Western people should start eating cats. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I just
All right,
think
I'm gonna
the
stop being
practicality
anonymous,
of
maybe.
it. I just think it's the practicality of it. Is
Yeah.
there's a lot more less reward
Mhm.
with what you would get from a cat and a dog than you would from an ox or a horse. Because
What do you think?
you're talking about one meal versus me being able to feed my family off of what I got for several weeks or maybe months, depending on how I store it.
Well, also, if you get rid of your horse or your cow, you wouldn't be able to make sure that your farm is tilled because oxen were used to till farms essentially. You wouldn't be able to till your farm without your ox. And you wouldn't be able to till your farm if you didn't have a horse, if you were using a horse. So you would be getting rid of a main food source when you killed that animal. What's your opinion on that? Sorry.
I I like the chat. This is fun for me. I still I get what
I left it.
I'm having fun with this. This is fun. Um, I still think it would be more practical in the long term because, like, even though I'm giving up their ability to do that, if I'm in dire straits where it's coming down to me actually looking at my horse and ox for food, the
Yeah.
payoff is still pretty there because of how long I can manage to take care of my family off of those animals.
Yeah. But that's one of the questions you might get in your sociology class. That was the first
See, that
question
would
I
be fun for me. I would have a ball with that because that allows my little brain to
I
go
was a
down all
menace.
sorts of rabbit holes. I would have way too much fun with that.
They gave us 3 weeks to like come up with a essay answer, and I remember I was just being a menace to society. This was like the past summer. I was being a menace to society in my like in my friend groups, in my Discord chats that I was in, the different Discord chats that I was in,
See, I
asking
need to
them
connect
so
with
many
you more
questions.
because I
But
like
yeah,
these kind of combos. That's interesting to allow my little brain go down the rabbit hole. Now I got a question for my daughter. Like, yeah, because she's an Aquarius, so she gonna love going down that rabbit hole with me. We have fun going down rabbit holes.
nice.
It's gonna be an interesting. So, what did you come to the conclusion of? I know you said you really still don't understand, but what did you wind up using as the answer for that question? I'm curious to see what you came up with.
um Well, the answer that I gave essentially, well, I basically listed the historical use for a lot of the animals, and I also gave the historical uses for cats and dogs and everything. And then because those uses also exist in other countries that are not like the Western world, so like in China, while you were using those dogs and cats as comfort, they're also still food because they are still um they're still like they're domesticated animals and they have multiple uses. So I my answer was I don't understand why Western people do not eat cats and dogs, and I said if they want to, I think they should continue. I think they should go ahead and eat cats and dogs because there's not really a much of an evolutionary difference in how like other countries, non-Western countries, and Western countries evolved with animals, with those animals. Essentially, that was my answer. My answer was that they should be eating it, and why?
That's like
Yeah, not
I just realized something came up to me. We treat our cats and dogs more like family members because now in the United States you can't even get pet insurance through your major insurance companies. So like with my Allstate house insurance, I can also get pet insurance for my pet
but you could have a
because
pet sheep
we're
too
treat.
and have a pet insurance.
But we tend to treat our animals more like family members than we do animals. So
Yeah.
asking us to eat a cat or a dog is like asking us to eat a family member. We're just not going to do that. And
Yeah.
That's the status of
But
them in
not your cat or
society.
dog. If you had a random cat or dog, is what we're talking. Because if you have a pet sheep and you eat sheep, that's still eating something from
But
like a
because of our
family member.
association, plus you got also remember we're looking at movies associated with cats and dogs in lovable ways. Our programming would not allow us to go and eat it. Because one of the biggest things that my sister said when my mother initially did the first time, you're making us eat Bambi. So
Yeah,
for a lot of emotional reasons, people would not be so willing to eat a cat or dog because you're gonna have a lot of people that'll think back to movies like Everybody Wants to Be a Cat and all these other cute little movies where you see the cute cuddly cat or dog, and yeah, they're not gonna want to eat
yeah,
Fido or
yeah. Like
Garfield.
the one thing that they told us that was that we had to take emotions out of it. So you had to say they're family. You can't say they're family. You can't say they're cute, and you can't say because um we love them. Like yeah, you can't use
So
emotions basically
okay,
at
so
all
how
when
about saying
discussing them.
because of their intrinsic value in the society? Then
Yes, but then the argue still goes back to there are other animals that have more value or of equivalent value that you are not eating. Why are you not eating cats and dogs?
see that that would be fun because like this.
Yeah, like yeah, so I couldn't answer. I couldn't really the answer really is the true answer to this is socialization. You are
It really is
socialized.
socialization.
Yeah.
It's programming because you're not seeing other animals constantly being advertised by the SPCA. You're
Mhm.
seeing cats and dogs and and horses. Like you do see those too occasionally out there. But
Yeah.
it's the inner programming. We are constantly seeing like look at all the cute little cat and dog videos on YouTube. We're constantly being programmed to see them as an important part of the society. And because it's held in as an important part of the society, you're not going to want to eat something that can get you more shunned because it's something that will get you shunned here. It's not something that's like you said that's common here. So it's more likely to have a backlash to it.
Yeah.
So
But that's
yeah,
it.
it goes back to the session.
Sorry to derail.
That's a fun rabbit hole though. But that was so fun derailment because that's kind of like making me think, yeah, why don't we? Because like in certain instances, we speculate that things are actually not what we think they are, and we
Hmm.
at times say that it's cat or dog, and we're okay with it in that sense of it
Hmm.
being questionable, but not being for certain. Because
Yeah,
then there's accountability to be had with it being for certain.
I see it as like the way how not we don't like I guess the rest of the world doesn't worship cows, but like um how Indian people, for example, the Hindus that don't eat cows because of socialization or whatever. I see it in that aspect. I also don't see why there is a moral issue when people do eat cats and dogs, because I think that it should, like, not that I'm like I'm not gonna go eat a cat or a dog today ever, but like I wouldn't I that question made me realize that I had a bias.
Mm-hmm. It's a natural bias because
Yeah.
I think it, especially like with the U.S. Cats and dogs are seen very much as American as apple pie. Damn it, you
Mhm. is your not dark moment?
part of our existence. So,
All right.
yeah, that's a fun rabbit hole. Now my brain is going to have fun going on that rabbit hole tonight. Just like, why don't we eat the cat and the dog? But I think it has a lot to do with this utility too. Because like one of the not so happy gifts the cat owners will often receive is unalived animals dropped at your feet. Like, look what I can do. I'm like, okay, thank you, I guess. When it comes to cats, like, man, like, yeah, I could live a long time without seeing that. Yeah,
I
that's
don't
one
know,
of the not
man.
so pleasant sides of the cat dilemma. Where did poor
Yeah.
Petty go? I think we done lost Petty.
I think we put Petty to sleep.
Oh, now we on timeout. We done put the host to sleep.
Did not like that. Possibly dropping philosophy from my curriculum. With that being said,
No, it's
Philosophy
okay.
can be
It's
fun
not
though.
supposed to, it's not supposed to, it's not supposed to have an answer. That's the thing. Like everybody can come up with their own answer. People were like, "Yeah, you can eat it." Like my answer was open ended. Whatever answer you came with, the professor did ask way more questions if you really still felt really emotionally opposed to it, and but like the discussion is what you got to grade on,
It's
and how
just
you feel about
every
it is how, like, not how the discussion, how you feel about it and what you think about how you feel about that situation is what you got to grade on. You didn't have to rewrite, basically.
yeah, it's not as traumatizing as we like to make it sound.
Yeah, I think
But
it's a really really fun class, but yeah, I think you
it's
should
just
take
a
it.
it's just a class to really sharpen your critical thinking skills, especially when you have to defend, your answer to things. And that's something you naturally do anyway, Prince Patty, because you deal with, the panel of demons and thought and the pushback and what you did here. So I don't see why you wouldn't thrive in class.
so dropping philosophy. Thank you everyone for joining. Be sure to leave a like on the video if you
No,
haven't already. Um,
that's that's my
and
favorite class. You can't drop it.
and
I know,
subscribe.
right? I love philosophy. Have a good night, Prince Petty.
Have a
Even though
great
you're
night.
dropping the philosophy.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night.
But
Also, let's see. Today,
excuse me.
22%, 22.7% of you guys are not subscribed. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. It helps out a lot. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Night night.